chips, peas, I think one of us carry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 6 and we are here. It is Wednesday. I nearly said it's Tuesday, but of course it's Wednesday, the 2nd of July. We'd like to go back to Tuesday and probably if you were Keir Starmer you'd go, can we just run that one again please? Because we seem to have made a complete dog's breakfast of trying to put a bill through. Keir Starmer came up with this idea. They wanted to reform welfare, right? So they came up with something called the Welfare Bill. And we've been speaking about it not just this week but last week as well. We said there was going to be a massive rebellion. There was. Not quite as big as it should have been, but big enough to humiliate the Prime Minister. Basically, the bill which he proposed was to make it much more difficult for some people to claim benefits. Some of those people would be disabled. Some of them would be disabled not perhaps physically, but they might be disabled in some other way. Right? The conversation moved from bad to worse. It then turned out that Labour backbenchers didn't want to reform the bill at all. It turns out that there were so many concessions made that the welfare bill has gone through, but it has gone through in such a weakened form that it doesn't actually mean that it's a welfare reform bill. It won't be reforming anything. So instead of actually reforming the welfare situation, he's leaving it as it was. And instead of it costing us less money, it's somehow costing us more money. Nobody's quite sure how he managed to do that. It's quite an incredible situation. We've got, thankfully, Theo Usherwood here this morning with us to try and explain it. Theo, thanks very much indeed. Fresh from the House of Commons only a few hours ago. Front page is absolutely devastating for Keir Starmer today. Starmer's benefits bill turns to farce. Front page of the Telegraph. Humiliation for Starmer after a U-turn on the Times. No winners on welfare on the Mirror. Utter capitulation on welfare, the Express. Bruised Prime Minister backtracks on welfare in the Guardian. Chaos in the Commons, the I newspaper. And a multi-billion hole in public finances in the Financial Times. So congratulations, Sir Keir Starmer. Almost 1 year in office, you have made a complete Horlicks of absolutely everything. And as if you wanted to put a cherry on the cake, here it is, the welfare bill. It's going to cost us about £10 billion. Rachel Reeves has now got no more fiscal headroom. She's probably going to be out of a job very soon. So is Keir Starmer. It is quite deliciously useless for this Labour government. I don't think I've ever seen such a collection of complete and utter numpties in my entire life. There's a word for them which ends in wits and starts with an F. But I can't say it, obviously, because it's too early in the morning. That's who we are dealing with, ladies and gentlemen. It's absolutely incredible. As if that wasn't enough, let's talk about the French situation, the boats, right? Front page of The Sun. Buggy useless is the headline. Apparently the French have got a new buggy that they're driving around in up and down the beaches, paid for by us, of course, because we've given them £500 million. But they're not actually stopping any boats. They're just filming them. Meanwhile, 20,000 migrants and counting, front page of the Mail. I'm obviously going to be taking this up with our man on the migrant tracker this morning because it turns out that 20,000 people have now come since the start of the year on the small boats and basically smashing the gang's latest is what it says on the front. Even the Daily Mail's found a sense of humour, which they never normally have. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We've got all sorts of other things going on as well, but we can't even get to those yet because we first have to do the main business at hand. If you want to join in, you know what to do. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. So, Theo, very good morning to you.
Very good morning to you.
I mean, we sort of knew it was going to be hopeless for starters, but it became more and more hopeless last night as it got closer and closer to the vote, which took place around about 7 p.m. I couldn't quite believe what I was watching.
No, it was
I
extraordinary.
saw you on Jeremy Carl's show just before 7 from the lobby, and you know, I thought, you know, poor old Theo's going to be in for a long night.
Yeah.
But actually, it wasn't that long in the sense that we knew fairly quickly that the rebels had won, right?
Yeah, the rebels had won, and even then you saw a rebellion of 49 Labour MPs. They were just going for the complete utter, complete victory.
Yeah.
When they voted against the government. Now, of course, it didn't come off. Keir Starmer was saved that last bit of humiliation, but his authority has been completely torn apart.
Yeah, he has no authority now.
It's done.
Right? He has no authority. He also has no kind of loyalty. Because the people who have basically thrown him to the wolves have thrown him to the wolves, and he's not coming back from that. Yeah. And he also has no kind of no kudos anymore. He has no skin in the game, because now every time he wants to do anything, the rebels will say, well, we don't like that. And so, quite frankly, because what the result of this, unfortunately, I think for people who would like to see some proper reform in the welfare bill, is that, it's now going to be impossible to take any money away from anybody who's claiming any benefit of any kind, assuming that basically everybody who's on benefits deserves the benefits.
Yeah, no, the welfare reform is done while Keir Starmer is Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Labour MPs are not going to put up with it. They're not going to have it.
Right.
And Jack Helsom's got a great, bit of commentary on I think it's on page
in the
10,
Sun. Yeah, we're going to
Sun.
talk to Jack later.
So it's worth, but Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves are hamstrung. They can't do anything, and that's a problem because if they can't cut welfare, then that means only one thing, and that means for your listeners, anybody listening now, it's going to be tax rises.
Yeah.
And Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer promised that they weren't going to come back with anything like the tax rises that we saw last autumn, but they're going to have to do exactly that, because they've got to balance the books. They've got to restore that fiscal headroom, because otherwise we end up in a situation like we've had previously, where the markets don't like it, and then they turn and flee, and then we're in real trouble.
Right.
So they've got to raise
We're already
taxes.
in pretty bad trouble.
We're in deep trouble already.
The pound is already hitting some lows at the moment, as far as I can understand it. It looks as though the sort of the long-term investors that would normally be putting money into markets in Britain are not doing it. They don't have any confidence. The housing market is already kind of on the brink of the doldrums because of the different taxes they've put on, and the stamp duty and all the rest of it, and all the changes. We've got the hospitality industry on its knees.
Front page of the Times. The boss of AstraZeneca wants to pull out of the UK potentially, and that would be a disaster. Yeah, right. It's grim.
It's very gloomy. I mean, the economic position in this country is already pretty gloomy. So, I mean, I'm not even sure they can come back with more tax cuts, because I don't think people will wear them. People will just go. I mean, look at the numbers of people who are leaving the country, and it's not just it's not just the millionaires. It's not just the people who supposedly the left don't care about. But the tax base is starting to disappear, and this is what happened in America in many of the inner cities. Like when they called it white flight, for want of a better phrase, but it wasn't just white flight. It was people who had money leaving the inner cities of America. And I remember when I first went there in the 80s. You go to a place like Detroit, and the inner city was just a complete ghetto. It was complete. Nobody lived there because there was nobody wanted to live there, because there was so therefore the city had no money. They couldn't repair roads, they couldn't repair bridges, they couldn't repair they were paying welfare out to all the people that lived there, and all you end up having is this kind of husk of a city or husk of a country where the only people who are actually left in it are the people claiming welfare. Yeah, and that's what you're going to end up with.
Yeah, it's
and those of us who are making money will just move away.
Yeah. And we've already seen the numbers start to come through from, as you say, people just leaving the country or elsewhere. And as you say, I think also what's interesting is that, especially when you speak to young people now, they realise the opportunities aren't here.
Right.
Can speak to they just realise.
And if you're mobile, and if you've got nothing to lose, because I did the same thing in the 80s. I was 23. I went to New York. You don't have any. You've got nothing to give up. You haven't got a house. You haven't got a marriage. Probably you haven't got a mortgage. You haven't got any reason to stay in a place. You just go. People are going to Australia. They're going to Dubai. They're going to America. They're going to Europe. You know, people are just getting the hell out.
And it's also the brightest that are doing it. It's the people we need in this country who are leaving.
Yeah,
and that's the really sad thing.
Right.
If we're going to turn it around, if we're going to make this country a better place.
You know, and we're importing that. You know, just a load of people on boats who can come in and drive around and give us some free food to make us even fatter. Brilliant. Forbes has said this: the UK faces the largest single-year departure of wealth ever recorded, with 16,500 high net worth individuals projected to get residency elsewhere. It's a lot of people. And then you've also got those who are either leaving the UK or are deciding not to come to the UK. Yeah. And that's damaging. So we can no longer compete with Dubai. Milan is now the destination of choice. Yes, interesting you should say that, because I know a guy who just sort of went to work there just recently. Apropos of nothing, funnily enough, I just picked this up this morning. It actually was tweeted yesterday by Kevin Peterson, the cricketer. A friend got bumped by two guys in London the other day for his watch. He told me how quick and traumatic it was. His takeaway was he never thought it would happen to him. What the hell has happened to London? Yeah. And that is the, when I hear this from friends of mine who are working in the Middle East, who say, you know, the sort of Dubai contingent now no longer are coming to London for the summer because it's too dangerous. You know, they go to Paris, they go to Madrid, they go to Milan, because they can't guarantee that if they come to London, you know, their Lamborghini won't get jacked and their Rolex won't get stolen. And I know that there'll be some people listening to this going, oh, well, so what? Well, so what? You know, that's the reputation that London now has as an international city. It's an international city of crime. That's what it is. Yeah, my wife works with a number of people who are expats in this country, and they're sort of, you know, coming in from America, some of them. And this, you know, they view London as being dangerous. Yeah. Because it is. They are worried that it is dangerous. It is dangerous. And I find that, I don't know about you, I don't know about your listeners, but I find that really strange, because I always thought we don't have guns in this country. Yeah. There are guns in America. I always thought of America as being much more dangerous. Yeah. So for me to hear that Americans find Britain dangerous, I just find just astonishing. It just feels like a complete switch around. But the thing about America, where I lived for a long time, and I still go to very often, there's not a sense that there's this random kind of crime that just happens to you. Whereas, you know, I mean, if you end up getting involved in some kind of gun incident in America, you've been very, very unlucky. Whereas if you get involved in an incident here where something's stolen from you just because you're walking down the street, or your car gets nicked, or your house gets broken into, I mean, that kind of randomness happens much more often here, which is why people feel you know, unsafe here. Yeah, I was speaking to one of the, Nigel Farage had one of his press conferences the other day, and host of sort of high net worth individuals. There were a few high net worth individuals in there turned up, and I was speaking to one of them, and they were saying they don't go out with their watch anymore. Yeah. They just don't wear a watch when they go out. If they've got a nice watch, they just don't take it out with them. They don't take their phone out of their pocket. Yeah. They just leave their phone in their pocket. They do everything on the so you're conscious all the time of thinking, I better not do anything stupid here in case I get rolled. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And it's actually quite difficult, because a lot of stuff that you do when you're outside, you know, you're trying to get a bike to get home or whatever, one of those electric bikes to get home or whatever, you have to take your phone out. It's not something I've ever done. No, I do it a little bit, sorry. But you feel quite like... Yeah. You feel... You know, better do this quickly. Right. You know, you have to get the app, and then you have to zap the thing, and then, start the bike. You feel like somebody could just come in, smash the phone out your hands. So you're on edge, and I can't imagine what it's like for women as well. You know, who are apparently much more likely to be victims of this kind of crime because they're less likely to fight back. You know, that's the problem. Yeah. Well, let's have a look at Liz Kendall. She was obviously the woman trying to push this welfare bill through. The scenes of chaos that were described. I mean, I was watching Stephen Timms, who was the sort of welfare minister, trying to organise before the vote what it was that he was doing, and trying to explain to people what the concessions were, because the concessions that Starmer made have basically made the welfare bill pointless. Right? It really doesn't have any teeth whatsoever. It's never going to reduce welfare. It's not going to reduce the bill. In fact, the bill, if anything, is going to go up. Here's Liz Kendall trying to defend it just before the vote.
I understand why many members would like to see the results from the Timms review implemented before the 4-point change takes effect. But reviewing the assessment as a whole, let me just say, it is a major undertaking that will take time to get right, especially if we co-produce it properly. It will be for those involved in the review to determine the precise table, but we are absolutely committed to moving quickly and completing the review by next autumn.
Now, this was the sort of the final concession, wasn't it? That they said basically, so anybody who's on personal independent payment is not going to have their PIP analysed in any way, shape or form. They're now going to do a review, which is going to be published sometime next year. So if you're on PIP now, all those people who worried that they were going to have it taken away, they're not going to have it taken away because nobody's even going to examine it.
No. So they knew about this problem on Monday.
Yeah.
And she was questioned, Liz Kendall was questioned about it on Monday.
Yeah.
Right, so you could, and it was put to Liz Kendall that it was basically a three-tier system. So you could have an individual with exactly the same disability.
Yeah.
But they're, so just break, I mean, it's so mind-bogglingly stupid.
Right.
But this is what they were proposing.
Right.
You'd have, let's say you have one wheelchair user who claims PIP, and they are an existing claimant, right? And they are entitled to their PIP.
Yeah.
You then have, now you're going to have a system where you have another wheelchair user, exactly the same disability, but they're going to have their PIP half of what it is for the existing claimant. You then they were proposing you're going to have Stephen Timms conduct his review by November, and he'll decide what PIP is. Well, he may put it back up again.
Yeah.
And you will have three. You could have potentially three claimants, exactly the same disability, all receiving a different amount of PIP, and so Labour MPs were raising this, saying you've got to do something about this. This is patently unfair.
Yeah.
It's completely unfair. But they said no. This is the way we're doing it. You heard from Liz Kendall. No, we're going to do the review. It's not just any time next year. It's November next year, by the way.
Right.
And Labour MPs were not going to put up with it, and they were going. The reason they climbed down on this was because they were going to rebel to the extent that the legislation was going to fall.
Yeah.
And that's why...
Because there was 120 odd of them that were originally going to vote against it.
And then what they did is they hid their names. So they then had another amendment, because they won over Meg Hillier, and there was another amendment which would kill the bill, put forward by Rachel Mask, the Labour MP for York Central. And there were 39 Labour MPs on that list, right? And the government looked at it and went, well, that's quite easy, we can win it. But actually what they hadn't taken into account was that a number of Labour MPs were going to vote with those same rebels.
Right.
But they hadn't put their name on the list, so they didn't have the whips ringing them up going, I want to try and persuade you. They didn't care, they just didn't want to be bothered. Right. So they didn't put their name to the list.
So the total in the end was 49, wasn't it?
49, but they would have lost. I mean, it would have been 90, 80, 90. It would have been catastrophic.
And what's interesting in Peace in the Sun by Kemi Badenoch actually saying there are now people called sickfluencers who are people who are on the internet telling people how that they can make claims and how they can be successful by putting in a claim. And we know from reporting this in the past, I think you've said it, it's page 2 of the Sun, basically 1,000 claims, extra claims per day are now being made, right? And according to Kemi Badenoch, the number of people claiming out of work sickness benefits has gone up by 50% since the Labour government have been in charge. So, I mean, it's become basically a massive racket. Let's have a look at what Liz Kendall said after the vote.
I wish we had got to this point in a different way, and there are absolutely lessons to learn. But I think it's really important we've passed this bill for second reading. It puts in place some really important reforms to the welfare system, tackling work disincentives, making sure that people with severe conditions are no longer reassessed. And alongside our investment in employment support, this will help people get back to work, because that's the right future for them.
Is your position really tenable, though? You've been repeatedly humiliated in the last week.
You know, I think listening is actually a strength in politics, as indeed it is in life, and I'll continue to listen to colleagues.
You want to carry on?
Absolutely.
Listening is a strength in politics. That's not what Keir Starmer said a couple of weeks ago. A couple of weeks ago he said he was up for the fight, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he wasn't going to listen to anybody.
And it's just noise is off.
The noise is off, and, you know, we know what we're doing. We don't need any lessons from anybody else who's not as clever as we are.
Yeah.
Now he looks like a complete and utter plonker. Brian in Glasgow. Morning, Mike and Theo. With this latest capitulation by Keir Starmer, is this the beginning of the end of his premiership? If so, who takes over? Well, I think there's no question that old Andy Burnham and Sadiq Khan and Angela Rayner are all sharpening their fingernails, aren't they?
Yeah, it's only going to be Angela Rayner.
Yeah, Angela Rayner.
I mean,
she's obviously now going to be the queen of Labour, isn't she?
Yeah, I mean, she did 2 PMQs, and you could see with the way she held when she stood in for the Prime Minister, and I would bet my mortgage that Keir Starmer isn't going to miss any more Prime Minister's questions. Absolutely.
He's going to make it today, isn't he?
He's going to make it. I think he's just not going to allow that to happen.
But it's going to be really embarrassing for him today. If Kemi Badenoch's got anything about her, she will absolutely strip him bare and make him look really idiotic. Yeah.
But it's also worth, sometimes with these Prime Minister's questions, it's worth just, you can always, Kemi Badenoch, we can see that she's often missed open goals, right? She gets the tone wrong.
Yeah.
What it's really important for her to do is to gently prise the wedge between Keir Starmer and his own backbenchers, to give them the room.
And he'll hate that. And what you want to do, and this is what I would say to anybody who was advising him today or advising her today, is just get under his skin. Because then he'll start abusing her. He'll start getting nasty because he can't handle it. He can't take it. If you start, needling him and fingering him, he doesn't like it.
No, he doesn't like it, and that's why they didn't vote.
That's what I'd be doing.
Sorry. You might have a go, mate.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to.
But they didn't vote for the amendment last night because they didn't want to give the Labour rebels. What she doesn't want to do is to be too fierce. So suddenly the Labour rebels go, whoa, what have we done? Oh, we've made the Tories stronger. She wants to give the rebels the room to allow them to attack Keir Starmer. Those questions from the backbench MPs could be fire, because what happened last week was because Angela Rayner is actually quite popular with the Labour backbenchers, and they respect her more than they respect Keir Starmer. When she stood in, you didn't get that fire from them because they don't want to embarrass her, and she actually carried it off very well in terms of appealing to those Labour voters. If it comes to a vote in the Labour Party, there's only one winner, and that will be her. And I don't think many of your listeners would be like, Angela Rayner as Prime Minister would be.
I think that's the beginning of the end of the Labour government and the Labour Party altogether. She might well be popular in the Labour Party, but she'd be bloody useless as Prime Minister. Although, could she be more useless than this one? It's 6:22. Let's get a voice note from Kitty.
I just wanted to say that I have a couple of very expensive watches, and through hard work I've managed to buy them, and I don't ever wear them into London in the summer. I go up to London 4 days a week. I always wear them in the winter when I've got something, a coat covering my wrist. There is a constant fear of being stopped, and I'm very careful, cautious with my phone. If I do get it out of my bag, I just stop in a doorway to check it and put it back. And just a note on the PIP people. The people on PIP are getting on my PIP, that's for sure, because they're sort of, I'm no longer going to get my free taxi. It isn't free. I'm going out to work every day to pay for it, as are you, as are all of your listeners, I would expect. The people that aren't listening to you, no doubt, are in bed waiting to get up and go and collect their PIP. Anyway, have a lovely day.
Absolutely right. Thank you, Kitty, for that. Absolutely. We had a lot of calls yesterday on this because somebody rang in or was quoted on the news as saying, I need my PIP because I've got my private mental health therapy that I have to have, and because I don't get a free bus pass anymore, I need to obviously get my taxis paid for whenever I go anywhere. And people are going, well, hang on a minute, why do you need a free bus pass, and why do you need a free taxi, and why are we paying for your private mental health therapy? People are really angry about it, and unfortunately, because of what Labour and the backbenchers have done, they've made it impossible now for anybody to be questioned about why they need their benefits.
Yes, and the problem is that the pool of kitties who are out there, right, is getting smaller. Yeah. And the pool of people who are claiming this benefit is getting larger.
That's the problem.
That's the,
and you can't sustain it.
There's more pressure on the kitties of this world to go out to work and pay money, to earn money, to pay taxes.
Right. And that's what people are getting fed up with, and that's why people no longer support this government, even if they voted for it, because they can't just keep continuing to pay for a load of people who want everything for nothing. I don't care what your disability is, everybody's responsible for their own, well-being at the end of the day. Yes, of course, there are some people who need it. Yes, of course, there are some people who should get it all the time, and that's what it's for. But what it's not is a way of life. Acne, for heaven's sake.
Anxiety.
Sorry, I'm not giving you money just because you look a bit spotty. You don't get anything for that. 25 minutes past 6.
1 year on,
and it's already falling apart.
We did it! Smash the people smuggling gangs.
There is no deterrent. More and more migrants have come to Britain.
You bought your bins there, Sikia.
And it turns out that Keir Starmer had a wardrobe busier than David Beckham's.
If it's the right kind of prisoner, Starmer and the gang can find them a cell.
One explosive hour.
U-turn after U-turn.
I'm frightened about how bad they are.
Absolute incompetence and deceit.
1 year of chaos.
Only on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory at 6:28. I'm Mike Graham. Theo Usherman is here with us as well, talking through the nightmare that was last night in the House of Commons for Keir Starmer. Absolute and utter humiliation. I mean, the front pages really do say it all. Utter capitulation over PM's welfare bill. What we've got, humiliated Prime Minister caves to rebels of the Sun. The Times, humiliation for Starmer after U-turn on benefits. Daily Telegraph, Starmer's benefits bill turns to farce. It really was chaotic last night. It really was. I mean, even right up until the vote at 7 o'clock last night, there were Labour MPs actually texting Talk here, and we're not exactly friends of left-wing Labour backbenchers, but they were texting in to say it is like nothing we've ever seen before. It's so chaotic. And of course, as you would expect, we found
there's always a
tweet. There's always a tweet, and this is from the 21st of April 2022 from Keir Starmer, and this is what he says: honesty and integrity matter. Today's humiliating climb down showed that the Conservatives know they can no longer defend the indefensible. It has never been more clear that Boris Johnson's authority is shot and he is unable to lead. Britain deserves better.
Yes.
Well, I mean, you could reverse that and take Boris Johnson's name out, put Keir Starmer's name in, and just go, last night's humiliating climb down shows that the Labour government know they can no longer defend the indefensible.
Yeah.
You know, they have completely screwed it up, haven't they?
Yeah, and
I mean, I want to say the word
Boris
again.
Johnson
I can't say it, but they've basically blown it, haven't they?
Yes,
for want of a better word. Beginning with F.
But you, it's very difficult to see how he pulls it back from here.
Yeah,
and it's just very difficult, you know, for Keir Starmer now to turn it around from this point.
And is he now? I know you and I have talked about this a lot, and I've said many times to you, I think something will bring this guy down. I just don't think he's capable. He's no good at the job. He doesn't look confident enough. He's too arrogant. He doesn't take advice from the right people. You know, seriously, and I know that you will always say, you know, there's no mechanism by which a Labour government.
It's just more difficult because he gets to contest it, right?
Yes. However, I just think this is it for him. I think this is the beginning of the end. It's been coming for a long time. He has no authority, as you say. He doesn't really have any loyalty from his backbenchers. They don't really want him around. I don't see how he lasts until the end of the year. I just don't see it.
So,
because otherwise he just limps on.
Yes,
and nothing gets done.
The problem for many Labour MPs, and you've seen this to a large extent with the Conservatives as well. Their majority wasn't even as big as Labour's is, but with Labour MPs, they're going to come in for 5 years, and it's really difficult unless you make it actually quite high up in the government to get a career, or you've got a hinterland to go back to actually get a job afterwards, and they're going to find that really difficult. And I think for many of them, it's quite, you know, they've got it in the back of their mind that their majorities are quite slim. They can see what's happening out there with the likes of Nigel Farage and Reform UK, and they recognise that they're going to be out of a job, and it's not going to be a soft landing. It's going to be really tough for them. And I think if you look at people like,
but will they not take the view that if we can get rid of this guy Starmer, who's killing the party, killing the government, killing the country, and we put somebody else in, can they believe in that person, and maybe they can see that their future is going to be better?
The problem is, of course, is that they will pick somebody, most likely to be Angela Rayner or somebody from the left of the party, who will not deliver what needs to be delivered. The one advantage that Keir Starmer has with Morgan McSweeney is they recognise the problem, right? They just can't deliver it. Yeah. That's the crux. They know what they need to do. They need to stop front pages like this.
But he said
on the front page of the Sun. That's what they need to stop.
But immigration, which they're never going to get to grips with, is the massive problem. If they can fix that, they could probably be in for the rest of the time. But they won't. The point is that he said he changed the Labour Party. He said it was no longer anti-Semitic. He said it was no longer left wing. He pretended to be a Blairite. He's not a Blairite. He's an out and out Marxist, right? And so he's kind of allowed the left to be still in charge. And so they cannot reform welfare. They're stuck with a left-wing agenda. They can't move anywhere now. They're stuck in a cul-de-sac.
And they are stuck. And Harry Cole had a very good column. It was 10 days ago or so?
Yeah.
And he wrote about actually how when Keir Starmer talked about Island of Strangers, many people actually, voters out there like that.
They did.
They like that.
And now he's walked away.
And then he's walked away from it. Exactly.
Right. Because he was frightened of upsetting the backbenchers just before this vote, which again was a failing technique, because he thought he was going to save himself, and he has saved the bill, but the bill's not worth the paper it's written on. And he might as well not bother.
And it's the voters to whom that speech appealed to. The Island of Strangers speech appealed to, that's going to get him out of this mess. But he doesn't really believe it. He's never really believed it.
No.
It's not.
That's the problem. He doesn't really believe in anything. As I've written many, many times, loads of you want to get in touch, by the way. The people on PIP are getting far too much, says Aaron. My friend is on top-rate PIP, and also his 10-year-old daughter is on PIP for ADHD. He says for him to go to work and for it to be worth his while, he would need to clear about £4,000 a month to earn the same as what he's getting off PIP, and that's Aaron in Belfast. Yeah. And that's the problem. People have been, because it was a ruse originally given to people to get them away from being unemployed, that was supposed to get them back to work, but in fact it didn't make any sense for them to go to work. It made more sense for them just to get the free money. And that is the terrible problem.
But it's also just worth recognising it's a qualifying benefit. So you can have a job on the side and you can get PIP. The problem is that PIP basically takes away any need to work.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
So
you don't need to get a job in order to get the benefit. So why would you bother getting a job when you can get the benefit without the job? Because when you're on benefits like that, they also pay for your rent. They also pay your council tax.
Housing benefit.
Your housing benefit comes in as well. So you've got the headroom, as he says there, his mate. He would have to make $48,000 a year to get a job that would qualify him to get the same amount in as he already gets in benefits.
And there aren't 48.
There aren't jobs. No, there aren't jobs like that. And meanwhile, the Channel migrants, since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, finally, I'm told the migrant tracker was going to catch up today. I've been saying all week that it's wrong. Hey, look at that, 43,224. I told you it was wrong. Yeah. Now they've certainly put it right. So it looks like it's edging ever closer to 44,000. I said it might get to 50,000 by July the 4th. Probably won't quite do that. But, it's certainly looking a lot more likely as to what that is. Let's take a little break, because we're going to come back with what's on the front pages of both the Sun and the Mail today, still very much concentrating on the migrant crisis, because the migrant crisis doesn't change. And in fact, the Sun says the migrant tide hits 20,000. That's just this year alone. This is Talk.
They don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:38. Richard Tice is going to join us very shortly, but we've got a quick couple of run-through stories to do. Front page of the Sun, buggy useless. A picture of a brand new buggy on the beaches over in Calais, northern Normandy. French cops paraded around in a buggy paid for by the UK yesterday as dinghy migrants set sail. And you can see in the background the guys on a dinghy, while these guys on the, in the foreground are driving around, having a very nice time, but not doing anything to stop them coming. Of course they're not.
No, and we've given the French 500 million to try and shore up, stop people leaving in small boats from the northern coast of France.
Yeah.
We've now hit a record of 20,000 people for this
Which
year.
is what it says on the front of the
That's
Mail.
up 48% on last year. I mean, the total by the, if this, and there's no reason why it won't, that we continue on this trajectory, we're going to well surpass the record of 46,000 migrants crossing the Channel in a year.
Well past it. And a very good front page in the Mail. A year after Starmer became Prime Minister and scrapped Rwanda, 879 migrants crossed the Channel on Monday, with a 6-month total this year at a record high. No one knows who they are or where they're from, but all will have to be fed, housed and given free healthcare, and most will never leave.
Yeah, so
and that's Britain today.
That's Britain. Page 4 and 5 of the Sun, all the gear, no idea.
Yeah.
You know, the French have been given, as the Sun reports, they've been given jeeps, quad bikes, drones, all in use. Well, there's one French police officer with tear gas. And the migrants make a mockery of it. They just run round them into the small boats, into the water, and then cross over the English Channel into Britain.
Yeah, and there's no chance at the moment of anybody stopping them. There is no way that anything that the Labour government is even introducing is going to stop them. We'll come back to that story in a moment, I'm sure. Other stories I think that were worth mentioning. 4 in 10 babies rather who are born in this country have a foreign-born parent, which I think also feeds into people's paranoia about the way that Britain is changing, where we've suddenly got 40% of kids who are born in this country have got a foreign-born parent. Now, that foreign-born parent may have come here by any number of different means, but there's a pretty good chance that some of those are people who have come here illegally, isn't there?
Yeah, and we've seen it with the Louise Casey Louise Casey report. There is no, because we simply don't know who these people are or where the people have come from. Then we saw it with Louise Casey in her report into grooming gangs, her review of grooming gangs, was that actually it would be inevitable. It would that some of these grooming gangs, there would be people who had come into this country illegally and would be housed in either hotels or houses of multiple occupancy. It's a problem that, and Nigel Farage has called for, and I think actually he's going to be proven right on this. He's called for the Prime Minister to declare a national emergency for this
because it is.
And the Prime Minister has resisted and resisted and resisted. But I would make a prediction that by the end of the summer they're going to have to treat this as some sort. They're going to have to declare something.
They are, because
it's
a massive emergency. Another one that we should mention: NHS patients face more delays from setting of minimum weights. Now, I don't understand what the reason would be for why the government would do this, but apparently ministers are preparing to launch a new 10-year plan to fix the NHS, designed to make care better, faster and more efficient. I'm sorry, I thought Keir Starmer said that they'd already created 3 million more appointments in the NHS. I thought they'd already said that waiting lists were coming down. Instead, it looks as though now they're actually imposing longer waits for people in order to fix the system. So somebody's telling a lie.
Yeah, and the reason that...
I can't imagine who it is. We're going back to the lie again.
Back, aren't we? Look, I think the reason they're doing it, page 4 of the Times, is the reason they're doing it is that there's a financial crisis in the NHS, and therefore they haven't got the money.
How can you get £200 billion a year and have a financial crisis? I mean, I'd like to see those figures done on a piece of paper. It's like somebody giving me, £250,000 a year, and I'm going, I'm sorry, I can't. It's a financial crisis for me. I just can't make ends meet. I don't know. I just need more money. Just give me more money. £250,000 is not enough.
200. I mean, it's now going to reach 50 by 2028. I think the NHS spending is going to be 50% of all public sector spending.
Yeah,
50%.
I know. And they're getting now well in excess of 200 billion because they got an extra 30 billion, didn't they, last summer, which they gave to the junior doctors. They're getting another 30 billion, I think, in the new spending review. So come November, they'll be. I mean, it's probably giving them 300 billion pounds a year, and they're having a financial crisis. You're just going to go, what's going on? What's wrong with you?
But it's just become. It's just ballooned out of control.
It really is,
and there's no end in sight to it.
There's no end in sight. Let's have one from Michelle in Altrincham, who's a listener every morning. She says, I'm turning 59 today. Happy birthday, Michelle, from Altrincham. Off to work, no handouts, no drama, and still look younger than Starmer. He's taken the taxpayer for a joke. Absolutely embarrassing. I think his days are well and truly numbered. Well, I did tell you. Everybody kept telling me, oh, no, there's no way it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Let's get a voice note from Jerry on welfare.
Morning, Mike. Jerry Fairshire. Listening to you guys go on about these people in PIP, absolutely makes my blood boil. I'm a night shift electrician. I was diagnosed with severe chronic arthritis in my knees when I was 44. I'm currently 51. I still work 48 hours a week, sometimes more. I do overtime, and I could easily pick up PIP because you can claim it while you're working. But I would never think of doing that. I'm more into paying into and help folk than taking it back at myself. But these people that go on about having mental health, he's a break. You can still work. Absolute work-shy malingerers. That's all they are. Keep up the good work.
Yeah. Work-shy malingerers. I think that's a very well designed phrase, and it's one that should be should be spoken. But of course, none of the backbenchers will speak about it. Let's just go back to the NHS, because I think we've got a clip of Keir Starmer telling us all about how well he was doing with the NHS.
Amongst the things, I could do a whole list, but I'm really proud that a year ago, probably, I was interviewed by you and I said we'd do 2 million extra appointments in the NHS in the first year of a Labour government. We've now done 3 million and waiting lists are coming down. There's a whole list of other things that I could probably go on about for a very, very long time.
Yeah, why don't you go about the welfare bill for a very long time? Tell us all about that. I mean, the guy is just deluded. I don't know whether he's deluding himself or he just thinks that he can continue to just bullshit us. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. My apologies. I know it's only 7:15 in the morning, but I've had enough of him.
He was the waiting list down from
I can't help it. I mean, we're lucky we're not swearing more.
7.49 million to 7.39 million.
It's just cobblers, isn't it? Rubbish. Anyway, more of the same coming. Theo,
we've driven you to that
You've
point.
driven me to that. I'm sorry, we've got to let you go because Richard Tice is coming up next, and we are here, of course, all the way through until 10 o'clock. This is Morning Glory.
$3,000 migrants have come across since he became Prime Minister. The migrant numbers for 2025, I think, have just passed the 20,000 mark. So we're on course for 50 at least. Channel arrivals for June just over 5,000, I do believe. So it's getting worse and worse and worse. And we have a government that not only doesn't have a plan, it likes to try to sweep this under the carpet. Yeah. They don't want to talk about it because it's very awkward for them.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:48 on Mike Graham with you all the way through. Good morning, Mike. Ray PIP, surely doctors should be taking some responsibility of who's getting signed up to all these PIP benefits. It's all been made so easy to quote mental illness and ridiculous ailments that shouldn't stop you from working. Obviously, I have no problem with genuine disabilities. None of us do. I'm 63 and still paying tax for those to live the same as me, but doing nothing all day. These people are bringing our country to its knees with all the free living. Linda in Wolverhampton. I think the problem is that people who work for a living are very happy to continue to work for a living. They don't mind being taxed, even though we tax up the wazoo and it's far too much tax that we're now paying. But what we don't want is to have to continually some sort of work for three people. You know, so that you do your own work, you provide for your own family, you provide for your own cost of living rises and all the rest of it, but you're also now paying for everybody else. It's absolutely ridiculous. Let's get a quick voice note from Tom on Lawless London.
Morning, Mike. Tom here. Great show as always. It's a sad truth that you have to hold your pockets everywhere you go in London. I don't live in London, but I work there, and I work in all the boroughs. I work in Central. I get around everywhere. And I was in Central the other day, and I mean, just the sheer brazenness of the thieves these days. It was myself and 4 other people were standing on the street, as I say, on a road in Central, and a girl was walking by. She was about 2 foot away from me, and then someone flew past on an e-bike, nicked her phone and was gone. And that is the state of affairs in London. I mean, you can't go anywhere now. I see crime happening all the time, and there's just nothing being done about it. Everyone lives in fear. It's a right mess.
We've basically got a country being run by criminals. It's as simple as that. Let's talk to Richard Tice, MP, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, of course. Richard, very good morning to you.
Well, morning. I struggle to use the word good every morning we wake up, Mike, because the state of this country, the lawless behaviour that you have just referred to and some of the graphics for those watching, it's absolute chaos. When I walk through London, I walk as close as I can to the building as opposed to near the pavement. I grip onto my phone. I'm looking over my shoulder. I've actually now got a device that you use when you to attach the phone basically to my wrist to try and act as an extra deterrent. So it's a very grim picture indeed, and that's before you talk about the machetes and the knives and the shoplifting.
Yeah, exactly right. And if your car doesn't get stolen overnight and all the rest of it, yeah, it's absolutely shocking. But let's talk first of all, though, about the disaster that is this government and the absolute shambles and chaos of what happened last night in the House of Commons. A man who decided to design a welfare bill to reform the welfare situation in this country, where far too many people are getting money for nothing. And he's ended up actually not reforming it, and not only not reforming it, but costing us even more money to continue paying for it.
It's absolute chaos. I'm obviously a new MP, but I was speaking to someone who's been in the chamber for 25 years, who's seen everything from the debate around the time of the Iraq War to the Brexit debates. And he said he had never seen such completely chaotic, shambolic behaviour and gutless leadership by a government. He was shaking in astonishment, genuinely. And yeah, this government, they've U-turned on basically everything that they originally started out on. And this welfare bill, it's not going to reform anything. It's going to cost people even more money. And it's a bit like the sort of ridiculous smash the gangs policy. This welfare bill is basically going to be, it's a sort of welcome charter to those who are abusing the system. Don't worry, chaps, carry on as you are. If you're thinking of joining the welfare system to abuse the generosity of the taxpayer, then carry on, because nothing's going to happen to you. There's going to be no extra checks. It's just a free-for-all. And it's just part of the complete collapse in respectable workmanlike behaviour and standards and sort of moral ethics and culture that we had in this country that's just slipping away from us.
Exactly right. And you and I have spoken about the hopelessness of this Prime Minister many times, but I mean now he looks even worse than he's ever looked. You know, it was said last night that he lost the argument with his backbenchers. He couldn't convince them that they needed to reform welfare, which now means we're stuck with, you know, millions and millions of people claiming welfare that they don't really need. He's lost his authority as the leader of the party and as the Prime Minister of this country, and he's lost the goodwill as well of those backbenchers. So he's basically a lame duck at this point, isn't he?
We're 1 year in out of a 5-year parliamentary term, and he's lost all credibility. He's lost his any respect that MPs in his party had for him. He's now basically just a sort of, he's a punch bag for the hard left, semi-like communist socialists on his backbenches, who they actually terrify me. When I listen to the ludicrous statements that come out of their mouths, I just have to sort of shake my head in bemusement. And now he's their punch bag, and they can do to him whatever they want. They've got the bit between the teeth. Who knows where this goes?
Right.
But
well, I assume where we end up is we get Angela Rayner as the Prime Minister, leading a very hard left, factional, sort of anti-British, anti-wealthy cabal of people who will just come after anyone who's got any money and any savings and completely ruin the economy.
Yes, I mean, those who are thinking of leaving the country will probably be accelerating their plans as we face ever more tax rises in the autumn budget. Those who've left the country will be thanking their lucky stars. I'm not sure what comes first, a financial crisis in the bond markets or just an even greater collapse in law and order as yet more thousands of illegals cross the English Channel. 20,000 so far and counting in just 6 months, up 48% on this time last year. Smash the Gangs has turned out to be Encourage the Gangs, and it's just another sort of area of public life, of society, where the criminals are just taking the mickey, laughing at us. I mean, it's a complete joke.
Well, 2 front pages this morning, the Mail and the Sun, both tell the story. The Sun have got the new buggy, which has been issued and bought by the French authorities. They're very, very nicely enjoying a little run up and down the side of the beach in Normandy. But in the background, a whole bunch of boys and men on a boat on their way to Britain. And they just say, buggy useless on yet another shambolic day. A number of arrivals here hit a record 20,000 since the start of 2025. That's despite the fact that we've given £500 million to the French. And the Mail say, smashing the gang's latest. I mean, even they've got a sense of humour about it now. No one knows who they are or where they're from, but all of them will have to be fed, housed and given free health care, and most of them will never leave. And that's true, isn't it?
And what we do know is that there are thousands and thousands more in northern France making their way or already very close to the Normandy coast. And there are rumours emerging over the last couple of days of ISIS videos, execution-style videos, on the phones of those people. And this is, we are importing criminals, drug dealers, rapists, terrorists, and the like. This is a national security emergency of the greatest order. And it's terrifying. It's nothing more than terrifying.
It really is. Let me just touch on the local council problem in Warwickshire before I let you go. Reform, who I think are led by a very fine-looking young fellow, an 18-year-old who's running the council up there now because the other guy quit. But there's a big row going on because the council chief executive has refused to do what the elected leader of the council has suggested, which is to remove a pride flag from the outside of the building. By the way, I thought Pride Month was June, not July.
Absolutely. And this is just after, a week ago, there was a 2-hour debate, which was longer than the debate about changing the abortion laws, by the way. There was a 2-hour debate in Parliament, general debate about Pride Month. Yes, the blob is trying to exert itself in various councils that we now control, including Warwickshire, where the chief executive took it upon herself to determine that she's in charge of decisions about flags, despite the fact that the newly elected councillors were elected on a mandate of Doge, were elected on a mandate of the national flag and the county flag, not the pride flag. And so, yes, there's a row going on. Our brilliant leader, he is a man with, he may be, in theory, he may be 18 years old, but he is a very wise man. He's a leader that people are very, have great confidence in. And I think he's going to surprise people on the upside significantly.
He's quite a good rugby player, I understand, as well.
And many other things beside. And my message to these chief executives and to the blob is be careful what you wish for. If you seriously think that it's a smart idea to stand up against elected councillors and say that actually their voters, their mandate counts for nothing, if your personal foibles means that you think you're in charge, then just watch out. Just look forward to the next few months.
I think I'm right in saying constitutionally the power rests with the elected officials, not with the people who are employed as administrators, right?
Absolutely right. And I think some of these executives and officers are going to have a bit of a surprise coming. So if this means that we go to sort of legislative and executive war with these people, then so be it. I think that's what we're elected to do. I think that's what the British people want to do. What they're actually doing is ensuring that we will win many more councils this time next year, next May, as people express their absolute outrage at the continuing waste of public resources, time, effort and money. It's just madness.
Yeah, it is madness. It's a good name for the show. Richard Tice, thank you very much indeed. We'll see you soon. Deputy Leader of Reform UK, back after the news with loads more. Unbelievable. We've been talking this morning about a new theme park which is going to be built. The Universal Studios apparently are going to build it in Bedfordshire. We've been asking many of you to give us some ideas for theme parks. Alison in South Wales says in the new theme park at 5 p.m. every day they could have the PIP parade. All the people driving their brand new Motability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going round that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth for this theme park. So what I do, mate, I shove a $5 in a pot and you can go and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed, and very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the park's hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. What about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park narrated by Angela Rayner. Says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. But they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide rides surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed Whack the Rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a House of Mirrors, where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it the channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine a Scouser say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the lane.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 3 minutes past 7. It is Wednesday, the 2nd of July, and we awake this morning to some very interesting news, it has to be said. If you weren't aware of it all last night, as you may well have been, you will wake up this morning to discover that Keir Starmer has suffered his greatest humiliation yet. He hasn't quite been in 1 year in power, but basically it all went horribly wrong for him last night when he went to the Commons to try and get through a welfare bill, which was supposedly going to be reforming all of the problems in the welfare system that we currently have. We're paying something like approaching £100 billion a year for all sorts of benefits that people get. Some of them deserved and many of them undeserved. And so we're going to take all of your views on that this morning. So many of you saying, I work very hard for a living, I haven't got it easy, there are things I could claim benefits for, but I don't claim them because I've got some sense of pride. Some people need benefits, of course they do. Some people aren't able to work in the way that the rest of us can. But an awful lot of people who should be working are not working because the benefit system has benefited them to such an extent that it's not worth their while to go to work. And that is what is wrong with this country. And I'll tell you what's wrong with this government. They had an opportunity to reform that situation, and the left-wing version of the Labour Party, the backbenchers, if you like, decided to kibosh all of that and humiliate their own Prime Minister. And so now we have a Prime Minister who is a lame duck. He's not able to change the rules on welfare. He's not able to change the rules on how much money we're going to be spending and wasting on it. He's not going to be able to change the rules on anything, basically, because he now no longer has the power. He's lost the authority of the Prime Minister's office, he's lost the loyalty of his backbenchers, and he lost the argument last night in the House of Parliament because he cannot actually convince anybody of anything. He's a lame duck, and the sooner he's gone, the better. Starmer's benefits bill turns to farce, it says on the front page of the Telegraph. Humiliation for Starmer after a U-turn, says the Times. There are no winners on welfare, says the Mirror. Utter capitulation, says the Express. Bruised Prime Minister backtracks, says the Guardian. Chaos in the Commons, says the Iron newspaper. And worst of all, the Financial Times, a multi-billion-pound hole in the public finances. If that wasn't bad enough, we've now counted 20,000 illegal migrants coming to this country in this year alone, since the beginning of 2025. But overall, since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, there it is, the migrant track has finally caught up with me, 43,224. I expected to go up further today. I expected to reach 44,000 by tomorrow, and I expected to reach 45,000 by the end of the week. 0344 499 1000 is the number. You know what to do. This entire country is going down the gurgler faster than you can say communism. This is, of course, Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Sharon in Staffordshire says this. Good morning, Mike. Why the hell does this government think that taxpayers should foot the bill for benefits? Lazy people that do not want to work and live off benefits. I have not got a problem with genuine claimants, but there's a hell of a lot of people that are taking the pip with this system, actually committing fraud, and are being allowed to get away with it. An awful lot of people say the same thing. Steve says, morning, Mike. As a small business owner that's getting hammered by Labour, I'll be leaving the United Kingdom ASAP. If I didn't have kids, I'd have gone last July. I've never seen such a weak Prime Minister as two-tier Keir. What a horrendous situation the UK is now in. We used to be great, says Steve in Huddersfield. So we did. Absolutely right. Let's get a voice note from Dave.
Hello, Mike. Great show. I've got the stepdaughter from Elle. She's 21 in December. She refuses to work because she gets with a universal credit and the PIPs £890 a month. She doesn't need to work, she feels. She pays 20 quid a week at this shared housing thing with 3 other ladies that obviously don't work. She's comfortable with that. It's an absolute disgrace. Just got a case of lazy-itis, although she reckons she's got autism. Pathetic. Great show, Dave, from the South End.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, I've been listening to so many arguments about this over the course of the last 48 hours because we now seem to have found ourselves in a place where nobody now can criticise anyone who is in receipt of benefits. Whether they're autistic, whether they suffer from acne, whether they suffer from some kind of, agoraphobia, they don't like going out, they can't work because they're frightened of actually meeting people, who knows, whatever it is, they've made it so easy for people to get benefits as a result of them complaining that they can't work, that there's no way out of it. Absolutely extraordinary. Let's talk to Joanna Bell, political commentator, about it. Joanna, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you today?
I'm very well indeed, very well indeed. But a lot of people very angry this morning, not least because as a result of the uselessness of this Prime Minister, who has now lost all of his authority and is now incapable of basically making anything happen, what it really means is that we're stuck now with a welfare situation where millions and millions of people are on these PIP allowances and PIP benefits, and nobody's ever going to be able to take the money off them.
Well, that's the thing, Mike, and it's just like the winter fuel allowance. Keir Starmer has done a huge turn. He's put a bill through which it really doesn't have makes any difference. He can't even save 5% of a 100 billion welfare bill. He can't smash the gangs. What is he actually going to do now? This is a huge embarrassment for him. And yet he has no power. At this point, now I did have hope. I thought there was method in his madness. You know, he was doing this tax. I thought, right, now we're going to, you know, see the benefits of what he's doing. But there is no benefits. The only people that Keir Starmer has benefited so far in his 1 year is public servants. He's given them huge pay rises, and the illegal immigrants. He's putting them up in hotels instead of putting them in, you know, military camps. We're footing the bill for luxury hotels for immigrants, and yet, you know, he's trying to take, you know, you can't even make up how desperate this government is. And, you know, come autumn, when it comes to the budget, it's going to hit the taxpayer hard.
Yeah. Well, the problem is that the tax base is getting smaller and smaller as more and more people leave the country. You know, so the fewer and fewer of us are having to pay for not only the illegal migrants, but also the whole benefits culture as well in this country. Let's have a look at what Esther McVey had to say yesterday. She was in the House of Commons talking about people with disabilities.
Has the government taken legal advice as to whether it is lawful to treat people with the same conditions, disabilities and circumstances differently within the benefit system? It is morally unacceptable, but does the minister believe it is lawful?
I would gently just remind the Honourable Lady that her own party had different rules and different rates for people on existing compared to new benefits in future. That's something they did. Once again, members opposite seem to be railing at the very problems that they caused.
Esther McVey's on the show later on. Liz Kendall just comes out of this looking really, really bad, doesn't she?
Well, that's the thing, you know, it's just the whole of the Labour Party is just run by social activists, Mike, and this is what happens. You don't have anybody with any business experience. You've got people who only care about, you know, immigrants. You have people who only care about welfare, and you don't have anybody who cares about the growth of this country. This country has no growth. They're not stimulating any of the economy. They've given away the Chagos Islands and then they've rented them back. They're giving millions to the French government to stop the small boats coming over. And the French are laughing at us. Yeah. They're buying huge quad bikes and you know, huge vehicles to stop these people, but they're not stopping them at all. They're laughing at us.
They are.
And more than ever, we are the laughing stock of Europe and the world, seemingly.
And just to make that point, Emmanuel Macron, I think, is arriving pretty soon for a state visit. And so Keir Starmer will be able to, you know, mince around with his arms around him, saying how great it is that we've got this lovely, wonderful relationship with the French, who are basically screwing us at every opportunity. Sacre bleu.
Every opportunity, and everybody thought, you know, that Brexit would stop these boats coming in. In fact, it's never been worse. So how do you stop these mostly young men coming over? They're encouraging them. I mean, it's almost like a tourist advert to come to Britain. Come over here, you'll get your hotel paid for, you'll get, you know, your driving license paid for, and, you know, a lot of these immigrants are actually working, which we discovered. They're working for Deliveroo. So the taxpayers funding their hotels and their lifestyle, and they're making money on the side. through, you know, working under the table. It's actually...
And the only idiots in this whole kind of arena are those of us who pay taxes, who can't get away from paying taxes because we try to do the right thing. But it's no wonder that so many people are now taking up picking up sticks and just leaving the country. I speak to, I don't know about you, Joe, but I speak to so many people every week now who are heading off to Dubai. They're getting out and going to Australia. They're going to Italy. They're going to America. They're getting basically anywhere but here.
Well, that's the thing, Mike, and Dubai is a very attractive place to live for a lot of people. You know, they've no income tax, no begging, no crime, pretty much zero crime. I mean, you know...
You don't get your watch nicked every time you walk down the road, or your phone.
Well, exactly. And yeah, there is a freedom of speech issue, but I mean, it's the same in this country. You can't even put a tweet up without being thrown in jail.
Every time you turn around, there's somebody else who's had their collar felt by the police because of something they put on Twitter.
And that's the thing. And then you have this kneecap band who have been given, you know, thousands, or some say even 1 million by the Labour government. And they're allowed to, you know, scream death to the IDF at Glastonbury. And there's no criminal charges, and that's Lucy Connolly is still languishing in jail for a tweet she deleted.
Yeah.
It's just, people are just so disenchanted with this country. They're driving out the high tax paying millionaires. They've driven them out, you know. They've done so much damage to this country in just a year. And yesterday he's celebrating his year. What has he actually done that's good for this country?
Well, I mean, I've got something for you as a special treat. Reformer put this ad out, which is 1 year of Labour U-turns. Check it out.
12 months of Keir Starmer just around the corner. It's time for a party.
Good morning.
It's here and bigger than ever.
You're as cold as ice.
Who could forget this?
We don't need your money, money, money.
What an absolute classic.
Another one bites the dust.
This was unforgettable.
I want to break free.
To celebrate 12 months of Sir Keir Starmer. Now that's what I call U-turns.
Yeah, one for Christmas, I suppose, if he lasts that long. I'm not sure he's going to last that long, you know. I mean, he really has got the skids under him, hasn't he?
I mean, you say that, but how many prime ministers... I mean, look, I do want Keir Starmer gone, but how many prime ministers are we footing the bill for their security? We've had so many. It's, you know, we can't keep changing prime minister. But on this occasion, I think you're right, Mike. I think we really need someone who solves problems and not someone who just papers over the cracks. And that's what Keir is doing. He's got a cabinet full of social activists, no one who's ever had any business experience, never run a business. They've destroyed the fabric of our whole society by, you know, they're destroying small farms. And it's just, where does it end? The country's going to be bankrupt if these people don't get out of power. So how do you get rid of these people?
I don't know. I think they get rid of them themselves. I think Starmer will be gone very soon. I think Angela Rayner is going to be positioning herself to be the next Prime Minister. And I think then things really start taking a turn for the worse. And I think the government then has to have somebody step in and actually prevent them from damaging the fiscal state of this country anymore, because they've literally run out of money. They've only been in a year and they've got no money. They can't tax us anymore. They can't squeeze us anymore. There's nothing they can do.
Well, you know, what they can do is, you know, put the immigrants, they could save billions of pounds by just putting the illegal immigrants in military camps. But they're so scared of them rioting. So what do you do? How do you...
I know, it's absolutely shocking. And the news that Channel migrants since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, 43,224. It's a big number, a massive big number. Let's just talk, before I let you go, about Tim Davie. A lot of people on the front pages this morning saying Tim Davie's not long for this world. He's another one who's hanging on by a thread after what happened at Glastonbury at the weekend. Well, he should be gone, shouldn't he?
He should be. He made that decision to air, you know, those awful chants. And, you know, I actually was going to go to Glastonbury on the last day, but because of what happened, I said, no way am I going up there. Tim Davie needs to stand down with immediate effect. There's no way his position is tenable now, you know, and we are the taxpayer, you know, paying for this. Why is that allowed on a tax-funded, you know, on our broadcaster? It's absolutely ridiculous. He needs to stand down. But will he? Do you think he will? I think he will.
I think in the next couple of days we're going to see an announcement coming out of the BBC, because I think they're going to say to him, look, you know, I'm afraid after everything. It's not as if this is the first thing he's had a problem with. You know, he's had Gary Lineker, he's had Hugh Edwards, he's gone through the whole business of the bias that BBC News is accused of every single day about Israel. I don't think he can survive it. I think in the end, I think he'll be gone by the end of the week. We shall see.
Yeah.
Joe, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Joanna Bell there, political commentator. Let's get a voice note from Mark.
Morning, Mike. It's Mark in Lancashire. So not only have they failed to reform the disability benefits that they said they were going to, there's an MP on X called Anna Turley, never actually heard of her, but she's saying that they've voted for a 16% increase in universal credit over the next 4 years, which I didn't realise was on the table. So instead of having a smaller bill, we've now got a bigger one. So I can only see, really, in the next few years, Great Britain actually going bankrupt. We've got less and less taxpayers. Reeves's punitive tax regime is driving out millionaires that we know. We've had the most millionaires leave now than at any other period. They've destroyed the industrial base with this net zero rubbish and tax, corporation tax and everything. So employers are just not taking on as many people. There's less and less tax receipts going into the Treasury. There's employers not employing people because of AI as well, because of all the costs. So we've got less and less people paying for more and more benefits, more scammers, more illegal immigrants in hotels. Where's it going to end? We're going to go bankrupt.
Well, that's it. I mean, there's only so much of a piece of string that you can pull out, right? How long is a piece of string is the question some people ask. And in terms of the fiscal elasticity of this government, it's not very long. They haven't got much of it left. And the more you pull it out, the more sort of raggy it gets, and the more it frays and it breaks. You know, you can't continue to put so much pressure on the people that create the tax that people actually can live off in this country when you have a bigger number of people who don't generate any money at all. Morning, Mike. Says Phil from Peterborough. Looking forward to today's topics. Keir Starmer, the man is toast. Have a great show. Starmer is a lame duck Prime Minister, says Tony. He lost all of his authority last night. It's game over for him. I think that's the problem. Watching the drama unfold yesterday, to my own surprise, I actually felt a bit sorry for Keith Starmer. What a bunch of muppets we are being governed by, says Rachel. I know. Absolutely incredible, isn't it? 0344 499 1000. The migrant tracker there, 43,224. Finally, they've taken my advice and actually put the number up. But I suspect by the end of the week it will be even higher. And maybe it'll reach 45,000. That'll be more people we're paying for. So if you're working today, just remember, for every £1 that you earn, you've got to make another £3 to pay for all the other scroungers who are not actually doing anything at all, except taking and taking and taking. This is Talk.
Yes, I mean, this is a disgrace, and everybody is commenting rightly that this should not have been allowed, and this was way outside normal critical speech. And as you say, it has two-tier written all over it if strong action is not taken promptly and immediately. And so we look forward to the responses. I do think it's completely wrong that the BBC should have broadcast it. And of course, they must have a way to have withdrawn it, and they could have withdrawn it more quickly.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:23. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. One here from Graham in Colchester. Morning, Mike. Great show as usual. Nickname for Starmer, Spino. Starmer, Prime Minister in name only. Yeah, I mean, that is the problem, isn't it? After last night, he has no authority, he has no loyalty from his backbenchers. He lost the argument about the welfare reform bill, and all of the things that he wanted to reform will now not be reformed, and as a result of which, we will all actually be paying more money for the welfare bill than we were before the vote actually happened. Nigel in Caerphilly says, I've just been to McDonald's for my morning large white coffee. It's gone up from $1.89 to $2.09. Please thank Rachel from Accounts for me for her sound economic strategy. That's it for me. No more McDonald's coffee in the morning. Well, this is the trouble. I mean, you know, $1.89 to $2.09, it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it's a massive, massive percentage. And that is why I don't believe when people tell me, oh, you know, inflation, food inflation in particular, oh, it's running at about 3 to 5%. It's a lot more than that, and you know it very well. We're going to speak to Ellie Chowns in a moment, Green Party Member of Parliament for North Herefordshire. First, a bit of breaking news about that Heathrow power outage. Remember the one that shut down the airport for quite a long time? Power outage that shut Heathrow Airport earlier this year was caused by a catastrophic failure of equipment in a nearby substation. It started following a failure of high voltage bushing, most likely caused by moisture entering the equipment before spreading. Sounds a bit technical, that, but to be honest, if you've got a substation that fires up electricity which powers an entire airport, probably best not to let it get too damp, seems to me. I mean, most of us get taught when we're about 3 years old, water and electricity don't mix very well. You know, just call me old-fashioned. I don't know. We'll look into that. We'll get a bit more detail on that and see what is going to be done to remedy it. Because obviously you don't want it to happen again, do you? How on earth do you get moisture inside the equipment of a substation, an electricity substation? Crikey. Let's talk to Ellie Chowns, MP, because last night, I have to say, one of the more humiliating moments for this particular Prime Minister, who's had plenty of humiliation over the first year of his premiership. Ellie, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Good to see you. A lot of different views on what happened last night. It sounds like it was a very chaotic night. You voted against the bill because, in principle, you're against the Reform Act altogether of welfare. Tell us why you voted against it.
Yes, I voted against this bill because it goes completely against the interests of people who are disabled. And I think it's 138 organisations representing disabled people, plus hundreds of my constituents who were writing to me individually telling me just how worried they were about it, were completely opposed to it. If there's to be welfare reform, it needs to be done together in consultation with the people that it affects. If it's reform that's supposed to be about helping people to get into work, then they need to put in place the support to help people get into work first before going about taking away the benefits that people rely on. And fundamentally, it was just an incredibly badly designed piece of legislation. And we saw that with what happened. It got gradually kind of eaten away by changes in response to the pressure from Labour backbenchers, a number of whom seem to have, discovered their backbones. And as a result, the legislation was very significantly changed, but still, fundamentally, it was poorly conceived. That's why I and my Green colleagues voted against it.
So you're not against reforming welfare overall, you're just against the way that they were trying to do it, in other words?
I mean, actually the welfare system has to change over time, obviously, because the situation changes over time. Demographics change over time. It's not the fundamental principle that there must never be any reform to the welfare system at all. This particular reform was incredibly badly designed, and it was going to throw, in its original design, 250,000 more people into poverty after the concession the government made at the end of last week. That was down to 150,000 more people to be thrown into poverty. That's just unacceptable. We're an incredibly unequal society anyway. Doing a reform that is going to throw some of the most vulnerable people in our communities deeper into poverty is just unacceptable.
Yeah, but in terms of the PIP payments, I mean, it seems to me that they've accelerated an awful lot, haven't they, in the past year alone? I mean, apparently there's more PIP claimants now than ever. 1,000 people a day are now sort of extra claiming PIP. So there's obviously a problem in the system because people seem to be claiming it for an awful lot of what you might call slightly spurious reasons. Because of the way that the legislation is kind of is put together, they're able to do that. They're not doing anything wrong. But what I'm saying is that there comes a moment, does there not, when you've got some people over here who are paying tax and some people over here who are getting benefits, and you've got to make sure that there's enough people paying tax and not so many people paying benefits that the government can't afford to pay them.
I think it's actually a misguided way of dividing the world into those who pay tax and those who pay benefits. Well, because we're not divided into people like that. Over time, some people may develop a disability. They may have been taxpayers all their lives and then they develop a disability or a long-term health condition that means they can no longer work. I've had multiple constituents write to me to say exactly this. Why shouldn't the system support them when they need it? The world simply is not divided into.
No, of course. But that's what the welfare system is for, isn't it, Ellie? I mean, the whole point of it is that it's a safety net for people who take advantage of it when they need it. But what it shouldn't be is a way of life for people. And what we now know is an awful lot of young people who are claiming benefits who have never worked, for example.
Well, if you have a disability that so seriously affects your life that it prevents your ability to function in a way that most of us take for granted, and if you are a young person, then inevitably you will be claiming personal independence payment when you are young, before you've had a chance to work, because you can't work as a child. It doesn't mean that you don't have a disability. It doesn't mean that you don't need that support. Now, the PIP bill has gone up. The proportion of claimants related to mental health challenges has gone up, but not hugely. It's gone up from something like 39% to 44% over the last 10 years. It's not a huge change. And of course, we have had COVID in the interim, which is well known to have had an impact on the incidence of mental health challenges. And these aren't just people who are feeling a little bit anxious. These are people who have really serious challenges. You don't get PIP unless you really do have serious challenges that you need support with. And the other thing to say is that PIP is actually an in-work benefit. Again,
it's meant to be an in-work benefit. It's meant to be an in-work benefit, but I've been hearing from people for the last 3 days, Ellie, I have to say, who have got members of their family who are claiming it, who have got friends who are claiming it. I've got some people who have called in to say I could apply for benefits, but I don't because I don't really need them. But it's so easy to get them. The system is wrong, and the system is far too lenient, shall we say, on people. It doesn't check up really. Most people don't get assessed. Most people don't get seen. You fill out a form, and if you know how to fill out the form, you get the money. And I think that's where the reform needs to come, surely.
My understanding is that you do get assessed, but the assessments have moved more from in-person to online.
No, you don't actually get seen. That's not being assessed. That's somebody looking at a bunch of answers that you put on a piece of paper or on an online form, and they ask you a load of questions, like, for example, can you go to the shops and buy your own food? That's one of the questions. All you've got to do is say, no, I'm frightened of going to the shops, and you get the money.
So my understanding is that the assessments have moved to online interviews, video interviews, a bit like
No, they haven't. No, they haven't. Your understanding is wrong in that case.
All right. Well, it's not the case that, there may be examples of individuals who go through the cracks in some way. Everybody can always pull those out whenever there's any debate about the welfare system.
But it's a massive, it's £100 billion now. So I think you can probably say it's not just one or two people. £100 billion is the benefit bill. It's too much, isn't it? Surely, to heavens. Where are we getting the money from?
Well, if it's about money, the changes that have been made to this bill anyway mean that it's not going to save the Treasury any money anyhow.
No, it's going to cost more money.
You shouldn't be starting a policy change like this on the basis of how are we going to squeeze more money out of the people who are already at the bottom of the pile. If the Treasury needs to raise more money, there's a very obvious way for them to do that, and that's through wealth taxes. It's through
you can't tax people. You can't put wealth taxes on people. They leave the country. You've seen it. It's happening before your very eyes.
That's actually absolute rubbish. There have been
not
11.
Rubbish. There's people leaving the country even as you're talking to me. They're getting on a plane right now and going to Dubai right now.
Mike, in the last year, there have been 11,000 pieces of media coverage based on one single report by an organisation called Henley and Partners that specialised.
No, that's not true. No, it's not. No, listen, I sit here every day. I talk to people every day who are leaving the country. It's not just about one single report. You've got to get out of the Westminster bubble occasionally and talk to some real people.
So that report said that
it's
there were
nothing to do
about
with a report. No, it's nothing to do with the report. It is the fact that people are leaving. I talk to people every day who are leaving the country.
Right. Could I finish my sentence?
Yeah, okay.
The media coverage on this issue has largely been based, I take the point that you've spoken to individuals. The report said that 9,500 millionaires were leaving the country. That's actually 0.03% of the millionaires. It's a tiny, tiny proportion. So, of course, you might have spoken to a millionaire.
It's not about millionaires, Ellen. It's not about millionaires. It's about ordinary working people who have had enough, because if you can now run a business from elsewhere, which you can now do because people are online, they don't have to be in a particular place. People are leaving this country and moving away because they don't wish to live in a country which is being ruined by the government currently. I know you're not part of that government, but you've got to open your eyes and see what's going on. It is a complete brain drain that is happening here. I saw it in the 80s. It happened in the 80s. I was part of it. I went to work in New York when I was 23 because there were no prospects of getting any jobs here. Young people are leaving the country, going on gap years and staying in the place that they are because they don't want to work here anymore because there's no prospects for them, because there's more people who don't make any money that we all have to pay for.
If I can get a word in edgeways, Mike.
Well, it's very difficult on this show because it's, I talk a lot. What can I tell you?
2 sentences ago, I started talking about wealth tax, by which I mean tax on people who've got over £10 million of assets, a small wealth tax. You responded to that saying people are leaving the country. I tried to respond telling you that there's actually no evidence of a multimillionaire brain drain. And you started talking about students leaving the country.
Well, I'm telling you that
not
everybody's
allowing me
leaving.
to finish my point about how wealth tax is how we could raise the money that we need to invest in public services. Which was what we were originally talking about.
But it won't work. Wealth tax doesn't work in any way, shape or form. You know that.
That's just an assertion, Mike. It's not an evidence-based view.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about evidence-based views, you can talk about any number of things that are not evidence-based, because nothing that comes out of Parliament is evidence-based, right? No policy that any political party has ever come up with is evidence-based. It's all about whether you believe in something or not. You ideologically want to tax rich people, that's fine, but it won't work, and it doesn't work, and it hasn't worked. And every time a Labour government has tried to do it, they've ended up having to reverse the policy. Look what happened in the 1960s when the Labour government were in then. People were leaving the country because they got taxed at 95%. They came back when the taxes were dropped, right?
You've just told me that you think that nothing in politics is ever evidence-based.
No,
and that's a totally non-evidence-based assertion.
So you're telling me that my assertion that your ideology is not evidence-based is also not evidence-based, thereby proving my point. It's all about opinions, isn't it?
It isn't about opinions. For example, our policies on wealth tax are very much evidence-based.
What do you mean your policies on wealth tax are evidence-based? What evidence?
For example, a couple of weeks ago, the organisation Tax Justice UK published a report looking specifically at the option of a wealth tax on people who've got more than £10 million of assets.
Right.
They calculate that even taking...
And how is that evidence exactly? Sorry, how is that evidence? What, they've calculated something and projected something? That's not evidence, is it?
Absolutely it is.
How is it evidence?
Because it's been worked out. It's based on...
I'd like to see you proving that in a court of law. That's not evidence. You work something out, you make a treatise, you make a theory, this could work if we did it. That's not evidence, is it? You really think that's evidence, do you?
There are examples of other countries where wealth taxes have worked, but the specific point here is that if you're proposing a policy, under your argument, any policy proposal at all would have no evidence whatsoever, even if it was based on very thoughtful working through and examples.
Very thoughtful working through isn't evidence. It might be very well put together. It might be a very persuasive argument, but it's not evidence, is it?
It is evidence that this is an idea that has...
An idea is not evidence.
That this is an idea or proposal that has serious arguments behind it.
Well, it can have all of that, but it's not evidence, is it? Come on.
Well, in that case, we won't know until we try a wealth tax. So let's try one.
Right. So you don't know whether it would work, in other words?
No, that's not what I'm saying. Right. I do believe that it would work because...
Well, you can believe it as well if you want to believe it. You can believe in the moon made of cheese, but it's not evidence, is it?
All right, so what is your evidence that any policy will work to cut the welfare bill?
What do you mean?
Well, any proposal, under your argument,
if you cut the number of people getting benefits, right, you will save money. Simple as that. If you go to those people, it is as simple as that. If you stop giving people benefits, you won't be spending as much money giving people benefits. That is an obvious
you may end up having to spend more money supporting them with health problems. I mean, this is exactly the argument that was made about the winter health payment cut. If you cut money to people who are desperately, dependent on it to heat their homes, and they end up in hospital because they're flipping freezing, then you're not going to make money on it. So, of course, it's important for any policy proposal to be thought through. Of course, it's important for it to be evidence-based, and that is
none of it's evidence-based. This is my point. Well, you've just explained why the winter fuel payment wasn't a very good evidence-based policy. Because it may not have been a success. And in fact, they've now reversed it anyway.
Yeah, they ignored the evidence that was there.
There wasn't any evidence, no.
But, of course, that isn't why they reversed it. They reversed it because of political pushback.
They reversed it, and I think we can both agree finally on this, Ellie, and I have to let you go, that this is a useless government. The sooner we get rid of them, the better. Surely you'd agree with me on that. No?
I think your views are just so simplistic.
Really?
I absolutely want to get rid of,
really?
Yeah, I absolutely want to get rid of the Labour government.
So you agree with me then?
But the government that we had previously was no better. In fact,
they weren't much better. No, I agree with you. They weren't much better either.
So the government that I would like to see is a government elected under proportional representation in which every single person's vote counts equally in this country. And then we can have the sort of politics where we have to have a conversation with each other and we have to listen to each other and not just shout at each other and not just take polarised positions, which is what so much of politics is about.
Well, here's what I would suggest to you, Ellie. Here's what I would suggest to you. Here's what I would suggest to you, Ellie, is you should speak to some more ordinary people and see what they think, because most of them agree with what I've just said to you.
Here's what I should suggest to you, Mike. Maybe you should be a little less patronising, because politicians do speak to ordinary people every single week.
Really? Well, I don't think you're speaking to the right ones, to be honest. But Ellie, thank you very much indeed. Ellie Chowns thinks I'm patronising, doesn't understand what the word evidence means. Apart from that, she's a really, really good politician. 7:40.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the condescending Morning Glory show. Here we are. Patronising, yes. Condescending, absolutely. Evidence-based, certainly. This is the only place to get the real truth about what is actually going on. And when you finally talk to people in Westminster, you find out what they think, and you wonder why they actually got there. You wonder how they got there, and what on earth they're doing there. Absolutely incredible. My goodness, says William. Ellie would argue black is white. Great show and great patience, Mike. Matt from Cornwall says the woman you just talked to is totally delusional. I know of many youngsters who are leaving the country due to the state of the UK, including my son, who is now in Perth, Western Australia. My wife and I are in our 60s and we're planning to leave if this government doesn't get a grip of things the public care and worry about. She's a prime example of why this Labour government will end up ruining the United Kingdom. Well, that's the thing. Absolutely bonkers, isn't it? Mike Gren in a damp northeast. Your guest Ellie is wrong. Where does she get her information from? I know of dozens of people who are on PIP with nothing wrong with them. I know of a person who goes to people's houses to fill out the documents for a fee. The system is indeed broken. Well, Kemi Badenoch's in the Sun today saying basically that there are people out there called sickfluencers who basically put videos up on TikTok showing other people how to make a PIP claim and how to be successful at it. Absolutely extraordinary. The UK, by the way, faces the largest single-year departure of wealth ever recorded, with 16,500 high-net-worth individuals projected to get residency elsewhere. One from Zoe in Lancashire says, morning Mike, I'm on PIP unfortunately. I've got degenerate disc disease and my whole spine has two metal rods running up from top to bottom. They keep snapping, and after the 9th operation to repair these titanium rods, in 2 weeks time I've got to have my back broken and more cages and rods put into place. I never asked to be like this. Some of us have no choice, but I do see people who go around claiming this benefit that they genuinely, definitely do not need or deserve. Makes us genuine cases look like liars, and that's just not fair. Zoe, very good to hear from you. Thank you very much indeed. Let's talk to Richard Gill now, who is Emeritus Professor of Mathematical Statistics and a consultant in forensic science, because yesterday, of course, the police in the Lucy Letby hospital investigation have arrested 3 senior members of the leadership team at the same hospital where she was found guilty of murdering 7 babies. Richard, a very good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning, Mike.
Thanks very much for joining us. I suppose we should start this by saying the police have said this has no bearing whatsoever on Lucy Letby's case and has no bearing on her guilty verdict, and certainly it may well lead to her being charged with even more murders. But what do you make of the arrest yesterday?
Well, I think this is a move of kind of desperation and an attempt to, regain the narrative, as they say. Look, the police have been talking about the 2 investigations, right? The investigation for corporate manslaughter of the managers who so-called stopped the doctors from going to the police, etc., and who protected Lucy. And they've been talking about investigation into what went on when Lucy was a trainee nurse at Liverpool Women's. They've been talking about that for a long time. So, I mean, just to keep a little bit of face, they just have to move on now. I'm personally not worried what this will mean for Lucy Letby. To begin with, the hospital managers are, I should think, pretty wealthy people who can afford top lawyers and pay top experts. And they can argue that Lucy is innocent. I mean, it may be a legal fact that she's guilty. She's in jail, right? She's convicted, but there are so many doubts about the conviction and so much evidence against it. I think this one will blow up in their face.
Yes. So do you think that they've taken they've taken the investigation into the wrong place? In other words.
Well, they are very obstinate people. They thought they'd scored with the biggest case of their careers, and they even won prize from the. I don't know. They won prizes for their investigation, and it has turned rather sour. And they're obstinate. They're clever, but sort of not really deeply intelligent. I think they're very clever, and they're just plodding on. Sorry to use the word plod, but they're just plodding on blindly, more or less blindly. And in order not to lose face, they have to continue with these with these next steps in these two investigations, which they've been talking about and getting lots and lots of money for a couple of years now.
Right. I mean, at the moment, the case of Lucy Letby is sort of not really going anywhere, is it? I mean, there's no suggestion that the Court of Appeal is going to hear her appeal. There's no suggestion that there's anything likely to change in that scenario.
Well, what is going to happen is the CCRC is working on it, and I suspect that they're going to try to do a serious and careful job on it because it is such a high-profile case. Therefore, it might take a while. I mean, it might take a year. I don't know. You can guess all kinds of things. And even if the CCRC recommends that, even if the CCRC sends the case to the Court of Appeal, then the Court of Appeal can still hold it up and disagree and find some clever legal excuses not to accept some new facts or whatever.
Right.
So but this is not holding anything up, what the police are doing now. I would imagine rather it is causing irritation because it's happening at the same time as the Thurwell inquiry.
Yeah.
The Thurwell inquiry is looking into the same thing. I can imagine that Baroness Thurwell was a bit pissed off that the police are suddenly doing this now.
Yeah.
And it could piss off the CCRC.
Right. I mean, it is rather a complicated scenario, isn't it? But we'll see what goes on. Richard, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Richard Gill, Emeritus Professor of Mathematical Statistics and a consultant in forensic science. He's still hopeful, I think, by the sounds of it. The Criminal Cases Review Commission, the CCRC, will in fact recommend at some point that the Lucy Letby case should well be heard once again. We'll talk to Peter Hitchens about that, I'm sure, later on this week. Let's get a voice note from Darren on Ellie Chowns.
Mike, Darren from Suffolk, great show as ever. Now, Ellie talking about evidence-based, factual things. I'm pretty sure she's just said that there was nearly 10,000 millionaires in a report that represents 0.03% of the population. Now, not Carol Vorderman or a mathematician, but I believe that makes it 33 million millionaires in the UK. 33 million millionaires. I think her calculations are not factually based. Let's get a mathematician just to analyse that, please.
Yeah, absolutely right. Barry says, well done, Mike. That's how to interview an MP. Top show, as always. One from somebody who doesn't give a name. I know 3 people on PIP who are driving around in £40,000 cars. Why does PIP allow people to choose any car they want? Also, they're getting the cars for their family. They should only be entitled to a basic car. Well, we've had this conversation before, haven't we, about Motability. It is incredible. Evidence-based is the term used to shut down conversation during COVID, says Alan. Great chat with that lady that suddenly started throwing a patronising card when she started to lose. Textbook. Says Alan. Yeah, I know. I mean, all this evidence-based stuff, you've got to have evidence. If you want to call it evidence-based, you know, ask a police officer if you don't know what it means, and ask a lawyer if you don't know what it means. But if you're a politician, you can't just say it's evidence-based because I read a report once that somebody dreamed up sitting in the back of a train carriage. Absolutely ridiculous. This is talk.
There was this heightened, massive increase in the number of babies that were dying in this unit. From whatever cause, there was no investigation into that. There was no effort to tackle it and no effort to sort of deal with this issue. That's more what this is in relation to. So it doesn't actually have a bearing on her guilt or innocence. Those are completely separate issues. It's their failure to take action when clearly babies were dying or almost dying and they failed to act.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. It's nearly 8 o'clock already. We're going to talk to David Elstein in a moment, former BBC executive producer and chair of Open Democracy. First, a voice note from Ken.
Good morning, Mike. It's Ken here in Dorset. Your politician guest, Ellie, or Emmy, or whatever her name was, typical politician of the modern era. Thin-skinned because you challenged her, therefore you're patronising.
I mean, it is incredible, isn't it? I've got one here as well from Sean, who says, Ellie is my MP, and as for her saying she gets out and speaks to people, we haven't seen head nor hide of her since the election, just to let you know. Well, there we are. Let's talk about Tim Davie. I nearly said Ed Davie there for a minute, who, of course, hasn't been seen since the election either, which in many ways is a good thing. Tim Davie fighting for his job, according to Telegraph, as Director General of the BBC, after the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, demanded answers from him over what happened at Glastonbury over the weekend. David Elstein's here, former BBC executive producer. David, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Tim Davie has sort of survived a whole raft of various different scandals in the last couple of years, hasn't he? I mean, his name has never been probably more prominent as a BBC Director General. Do you think he survives this one?
I suspect he will. I mean, technically the buck stops with the DG. That's the nature of the job. But although he was on the scene of the crime at Glastonbury, he didn't actually have his fingerprints on what went wrong. And various things went wrong with the BBC's editorial processes. They didn't do enough due diligence on Bob Villan. They didn't have a contingency plan in case those provocateurs went off the rails, and they didn't pull the plug when they needed to. None of those were directly to do with Tim. I don't know him. I have no idea whether he feels he is ultimately responsible, but my suspicion is that assistant heads will roll, not the top.
I mean, I suppose that's often the way, but I mean, in all of the kind of the difficulties that he's had, whether it be accusations about, you know, bias against Israel from the news department, or whether it be Gary Lineker's pronouncements on social media, or Hugh Edwards and the trouble that he's had with trying to get his money back from him and all the rest of it, and plus even just allowing him to get away with what he got away with. We never hear of anybody actually getting fired. I mean, I don't remember anybody getting fired over any of that stuff.
No, the last person who was forced out was over the Jonathan Ross...
the Russell Brand thing.
The Russell Brand, where
that was ages ago.
After Ofcom fined the BBC 150,000 quid, right. The head of Radio 2, Leslie Douglas, did resign.
That's right, yeah.
And there was no doubt that she was culpable, because she could easily have prevented that ridiculous farrago being broadcast.
Right.
Look, the BBC is a vast organisation, far too vast for its own good.
Yeah.
Lots of things go wrong, regularly go wrong. But it wasn't Tim Davie who failed to vet the Gaza documentary. It was his news division.
Yeah.
It wasn't Tim Davie who instructed Hugh Edwards to become a paedophile. He had to deal with the knock-on about that. Right. He hasn't done very well with any of these when they do land on his plate. but I don't think even cumulatively they will result in him being forced out. Least of all at a time when the BBC is embarking on charter review.
Well, he's got a new report.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a new report about to come out, I think, on the handling of that Gaza documentary as well. And I guess it comes back to what Lisa Nandy said, and I don't take any lessons from Lisa Nandy on leadership, by the way, but she says it's all about leadership. You know, one mistake could be considered to be unfortunate, but there have been an awful lot of them. And at the end of the day, there's a culture, I think, that people think at the BBC where people just kind of get moved, or, you know, they don't really leave the building. They don't really, you know, unless something terrible has to happen before somebody takes any serious responsibility.
Look, absolutely. When Cliff Richard won his case against the BBC, and the judge was absolutely scathing in his criticisms of the BBC and named various individuals who had done really foolish and bad things. Nobody resigned, nobody was fired, no consequences, except that you and I, as licence fee payers, picked up the £2 million bill.
Right. And our licence fee continues to go up. You know, it's like, you know, you get a worse service, you don't really watch it as much, but you're somehow paying more for it.
Well, that's one of the things that dear Lisa and Andy will be deciding, hopefully, in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely right. David, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. David Elstein, former BBC executive producer, chair of Open Democracy. We'll bring you more news on the fault at the Heathrow electrical substation. Apparently it was first detected 7 years ago. But they didn't fix it. Of course they didn't. Why would you? This welcome to Britain. Jesus Christ. Does anybody know how to do anything in this country anymore? We'll be back with Esther McVeigh and more about Ellie Chown. Or is it Clown? This is Talk. Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental people because we'll do all the judging for you. Let's just have a look at how Humsley Useless is now spending his time.
There goes your career, mate.
Over there a bit is over towards where all the migrants come in. He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar. Hello, and lady. Unfortunately, it catches on his Johnson.
If he's Plank of the Week, he's got a sizable plank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the Week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 3 minutes past 8. If you didn't laugh, you'd be crying, wouldn't you? I mean, it is absolutely extraordinary what's going on in this country. We've got breaking news this morning that the fault of the Heathrow electrical substation, which caused the fire, was first detected 7 years ago, but wasn't fixed, right? The report says that the fire was most likely caused by moisture entering the substation. Well, do you know what? If they'd only used Keir Starmer's method, maybe things would have got better and they wouldn't have had the blackout. Check it out.
Fixing the foundations, it is like finding damp in your wall. You can paint over it and get the hairdryer out and dry it. All done that. Hope it goes away. Or you can strip it out, rip out the plaster and deal with the problem once and for all.
Yep, they could have done that, but they didn't do it. And then look what happened. 7 years later, there was a blackout and nobody could fly anywhere. And so that was one problem. Second problem this morning is, of course, that the government have managed to make a complete Horlicks of the welfare bill. Instead of actually putting a welfare bill through, which meant that welfare would be reformed, fewer people would be able to claim benefits and we'd be able to save some money. They've now managed to water it down to such an extent so that they didn't get a rebellion by too many MPs, so that Keir Starmer would have had to fall on his sword and leave Downing Street. Basically, they've said it's now going to cost even more money, right? But they don't know exactly how much more money. Pat McFadden, who is the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, I think, or something like that, he was asked this morning how he's going to pay for it.
While I accept that this decision yesterday has financial consequences, it is one moving part in many moving parts, and it's not right for me to speculate on how all those moving parts fit together in any particular fiscal event.
No, absolutely not for you to speculate at all, given that you're part of the government and you may well have to find out how you're going to pay for something which you don't have any money to pay for. It's a moving part. I wish Keir Starmer was a moving part. He could move out of Downing Street then, couldn't he? We'll be talking about all of that. Esther McVeigh's here. She's been asking a lot of questions about the changes in disability benefits, because it now seems as though there's at least a two-tier system, whereas you get disability benefit now, but if you apply for it this time next year, you might not, because it doesn't matter if you're disabled next year, because you won't qualify. It's absolutely bonkers. Meanwhile, Tim Davies still on the job at the BBC, despite Glastonbury. And also the NHS, apparently, despite the fact that Keir Starmer says it's his proudest moment that they've managed to create 3 million new appointments in the NHS, they're now launching another 10-year plan to fix it. I thought they'd already fixed it. Apparently not. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We're having a lot of fun this morning. It's 8:05.
They don't know what the they're doing. You understand that?
Deary me. Here's one from Balm. He says, evidence-based fact. People waiting for various NHS appointments are being put on PIP while they have to wait 18 months to see a specialist and receive treatment. Now, that's interesting. Bobby Clacton says, Mike, great show. If they try to get rid of two-tier, he might have a hissy fit and call a general election just to spite them all. We can only hope. Now, Stuart says, fantastic, Mike. Great interview with Ali. I'm so happy now that I'm skint and the lefties can't get any more of my money to help them destroy the country. It does feel a bit like that, doesn't it? I'm sorry, I don't think I'm paying enough tax. Can I pay some more tax, please, so that more people who are pretending to be in need of benefits can get them? Let's talk to Esther McVeigh, sensible woman, former Minister for Common Sense, of course. Esther, very good morning to you.
Great to be with you.
It's hard to keep a straight face this morning. I mean, I know we should be really worried about what's going on inside the head of Keir Starmer and what the government's actually done overnight, because they've made a complete Horlicks of this welfare bill. We've now somehow ended up, instead of reforming it and saving ourselves some money, we're not reforming it, and it's going to cost even more money.
Well, I think we've been talking about this for some time. As soon as they announced it, and let's be honest, it was never anything about reform of the benefit system or supporting people into work. All it was about was finding money. They saw that as a department that spent a lot of money. Rachel Reeves needed billions of pounds to fill her black hole, so she went there straight away. So this was never about supporting people into jobs. This was about saving Rachel Reeves' job. And that really was the start of the problem. Because really, you've got to think about welfare reform. What are you doing? How are you going to do it? And put it in place, which they did not. And that is where it all started to go wrong, and the backbenchers already started to put in their concerns, but nobody wanted to listen.
Right.
And then from there, it got worse. Hence my question yesterday, which was a legal question. And remember, Keir Starmer goes on all about that he's a lawyer. Well, he hadn't actually checked out the most basic thing, and that was introducing a two-tier benefit system.
Right. Well, this is the problem, isn't it? They haven't really thought any of it through. They were so desperate to try and get some form of bill through Parliament, notwithstanding their own rebel MPs, that they were willing to kind of sign anything, really, just to let it happen. Now, let's have a look at your question. I'm sure you don't mind watching it again.
Has the government taken legal advice as to whether it is lawful to treat people with the same conditions, disabilities and circumstances differently within the benefit system? It is morally unacceptable, but does the minister believe it is lawful?
I would gently just remind the Honourable Lady that her own party had different rules and different rates for people on existing compared to new benefits in future. That's something they did. Once again, members opposite seem to be railing at the very problems that they caused.
I mean, poor old Liz Kendall doesn't really know which end is up, does she? I mean, I'm not even sure she's going to last the week at this rate. But I mean, here's an idea. Surely if you were somebody who was claiming for a disability, which you weren't claiming for now but will do in the future, and you were treated differently to somebody else who had the same disability, you might go and find yourself a nice human rights lawyer to say, surely this is against my human rights, isn't it?
I think this is exactly what will happen. The whole system will be clogged up with court case after court case. I think, actually, that screeching, or yet another screeching U-turn by Keir Starmer could have been as a result of my question, because he realised then what a disaster it was. He realised it was unworkable, unenforceable, and it really was a lame duck of a policy, and all of his pressure from his backbenchers. But obviously, Liz Kendall there didn't answer the question. Had they got legal advice on that, she couldn't answer that. And yes, there has always been different when there's different types of benefits, so there could be incapacity benefits, right. So there will be people on different benefits. However, Ian Duncan Smith, when we came in 2010, introduced a brand new benefit, so you all start on a brand new benefit. I will also say you probably do need to constantly update the disability benefit, because what you see is people tell you how to fill out the forms online. I mean, you get to know how to work the system, and for it to be fair and to the people, like the taxpayers who pay for it, it needs to be consistently updated, something Labour will singly fail to do because it's not in their DNA to want to change benefits.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? Because this really, really badly thought out plan by Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves has left them now in a place where they can't really discuss whether there are people who shouldn't be getting the benefits. It's almost as though they've shut that whole conversation down. I mean, there was hardly anybody in Parliament yesterday talking about what Kemi Badenoch says is now a racket. It's not a safety net. You know, there are people claiming PIP who shouldn't be claiming it. There are, 50% more people on sickness benefits than there were when Labour took over in July last year. So, there's people, even as you say, showing people how to make the claims. Everybody knows it's a racket, but I just had a Green MP on called Ellie Chowns, who didn't seem to accept that that was the case, seemed to think that basically everybody who's on benefits deserves to get the money. And as long as you've got that attitude, you're never going to save any money.
Yes, I did hear that interview. I got some facts up that she got wrong, so I might read them out. But you're quite right. What you need to do is face-to-face interviews.
Yes.
You really assess whether anybody has got a disability. You can't do that online. You can't do that on the phone, and you can't do it on a piece of paper, because that's where people are. And these are the words, gaming the system.
Yes.
So the system has to catch up with that. But you also said millionaires weren't leaving the country. Mike, you were completely wrong about that. Well, I'll just tell her she's completely wrong, because I've just got stats up here on Britain has lost the most millionaires. So places like the United Arab Emirates are getting millionaires going to there. United States are getting millionaires going to there. Italy is getting millionaires. The United Kingdom is losing, and did last year, 16,500 millionaires. And next year, it's going to be worse.
Yes, and my point as well, Esther, is not just about millionaires, it's about ordinary people, because I hear from them every single day. You
you know as well as I do, when you do this kind of job, you hear from ordinary people who have got businesses, who have got kids, and I'm hearing from loads and loads of people who say my son or my daughter have decided to move to Australia, they've decided to go to work in Dubai. You know, I'm going to pick up sticks. I can move my business, or I'm about to retire, and I'm sick to death of paying too much tax in this country. You know, you get a sense of what's going on out there, which she didn't seem to want to recognise. And there's loads of people who have just had enough, and they're just getting out.
Well, you're quite right. I'll tell you a little story. I was at the train station coming down to London, and I bumped into somebody I hadn't seen for a long time. I said, I haven't seen you for ages, and he was a legal tax expert. I said, I haven't seen you. He said, oh no, it's because he looks after 40 wealthy families, and all 40 had left the country.
All of them.
And he said, if it's going to Europe, it's Italy. If it's younger people, so usually older people to stay close to the family, are going to Italy.
Right.
If they're younger, they're going to Dubai. He said he had one going to Singapore, said that isn't normal. That's usually the sort of Italy, sort of Dubai that we're getting. So like you rightly said, she isn't speaking to people. I don't actually think she wants to hear that answer. Like you said, evidence-based is very different from a belief or an opinion or a proposition, which is what they're putting forward. And we know this Labour government isn't doing any impact assessments. It's not doing any modelling. And this is where it's going completely wrong on all of its policies.
Right, exactly right. And of course, one thing we can see from the front pages again this morning is that the people coming the other way are certainly not millionaires, but they're coming here to live very nicely off the taxpayer. Thank you very much indeed. Front page of the Daily Mail, 20,000 this year and counting. Labour's abject failure to protect our borders was laid bare yesterday as it emerged. A record 20,000 small boat migrants have reached Britain in the first half of this year. Add that to the 23,000 that came last year since July the 4th. So basically, since Labour got in, 43,000 plus another couple of hundred have come here. It will be 44,000 probably before the end of the week. It's too much, and as the Mail says, all of these people will have to be fed, housed and given free healthcare, and most of them will never leave. And that's true,
Exactly. And it's, you know, the top 10% of earners are paying 60% of the bill. That's 60% of the bill. So those who are earning the most are paying absolutely the most. So your next question is, where is Labour now that they have got another black hole, have collapsed on their welfare reforms? Where are they going to get the money from? Well, there's some dangerous things that they're bringing forward. One, they're going to probably do an attack on pensions, pension funds. But worst, and everybody should be really worried about this, and this is they're looking to introduce a socio-economic duty into the Equality Act. That will technically mean walloping the middle classes. They're going to go after the middle classes for more and more money, and it will be unachievable. It will be absolutely unfair. I mean, this it's not just the leader who needs to go, it's the whole party that need to go. They don't know what they're doing.
No.
They don't know which direction is forward, and they haven't prepared for government.
Well, you just heard Pat McFadden there saying, you know, he doesn't want to talk about all the different moving parts when he's asked a direct question as one of the most senior members of the Cabinet. How are you going to pay for this new welfare reform bill, which apparently is going to mean that you need more money rather than less money? And he can't answer the question. You know, this is the problem. Keir Starmer can't answer the question. Rachel Reeves is nowhere to be seen. You know, what's going on?
Well, I think they don't want to answer the question because, like I say, it will be absolutely horrendous, the squeeze they're going to do. They can't go after businesses, so they will be going after the middle classes and the pensioners. And look at the U-turns they've done. So for winter fuel U-turns probably cost them $1.25 billion. The welfare U-turn, $1.5 billion there. The scrapping the child benefit cap is $3.5 billion. I mean, we're talking billions upon billions, as well as what they're not getting now from growth, because businesses can't afford all of their tax and welfare reforms and the working rights reforms.
I know. It's absolutely extraordinary. Absolutely incredible. Esther, listen, we've got to run. Thank you very much indeed. Good to talk to you. Esther McVey, former Minister for Common Sense. Your reader column in the Daily Express, of course, every week as well. Coming up, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith is going to be joining us. Jack Elsom as well, the political editor of The Sun, because we need to talk about Keir Starmer and where he goes from here, because the page 10 piece written by Jack today says the PM's gutted benefits bill proves that Labour rebels are now in charge.
So Starmer, as useless as he is now not even really the Prime Minister. Somebody said to me, I think it was Mark Francois who said to me last week, Keir Starmer's not really the Prime Minister anymore, he's just a bloke that lives in Downing Street. I think that's right. 18 minutes past 8.
One year on.
And it's already falling apart.
We did it! Smash the people smuggling gangs.
There is no deterrent.
More and more migrants have come to Britain.
You bought your bins there, Sikia.
And it turns out that Keir Starmer had a wardrobe busier than David Beckham's.
If it's the right kind of prisoner, Starmer and the gang can find them a cell.
One explosive hour.
U-turn after U-turn.
I'm frightened about how bad they are.
Absolute incompetence and deceit.
1 year of chaos.
Only on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glories. 21 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham. Bob in Aberdeen says this. Mike, I'm listening to your last guest who thinks a think tank projects his evidence. I project with my evidence of the last 12 months that we are truly doomed. I'm leaving. And Jeff says in Bedford, if Ellie Chowns is the quality of MPs we're voting into Parliament in this country, as well and truly, fill in your own bit here. Yeah, try not to swear. Thank you very much indeed. Let's get a voice note from Brian on welfare.
Good morning, Mike. Brian from Hayes here. I live 2 doors away from generational dossers, and one trick is you get your child, your new child, you know, your new 3 children, and you get them signed up as being anxious and on some sort of spectrum. Then you get a free car because they can't get on the bus. This definitely happens. The next thing is, it's like PIP was designed by the Chinese car industry, because they're the people that are hoovering up all the cars.
Yeah, I mean, you do wonder how on earth we got here, don't you? I mean, Kemi Badenoch in the Sun this morning saying that basically there are 50% more people now claiming disability benefits than there were when Labour took over last January. And there are now well-known people who are called sickfluencers who are actually on social media telling people how they can make claims under the PIP scenario. Absolutely extraordinary. Let's talk to Serene Duncan-Smith, MP, former Conservative Party leader, and of course a man who knows a thing or two about welfare reform, having been in charge of it for quite some time in government. Serene, a very good morning to you.
Morning to you, mate.
This is a complete car crash, isn't it? I mean, you couldn't even have imagined how bad that this would be. I mean, how can you come up with a reform bill which ends up not only not reforming welfare but actually costing more money?
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't have written the script, really. It's like one of those Benny Hill shows, really, isn't it?
It is.
All you needed was somebody chasing people around the damn stage yesterday.
Yeah.
I sat in the House of Commons, and, suddenly it was bad enough already because they'd cut most of their savings and they were down to about $1.5 billion left.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, under attack, the relevant minister gets up and says, oh, yeah, by the way, we're going to get rid of the rest now with one small bit, that's it. So literally the one announcement, they now got them down to no savings, no change. And this, by the way, was never reformed. When I was there, we left, when I was Secretary of State, I left office with the lowest number of workless households and real tough restrictions on serious benefit control. And we saved a significant amount of money, which we invested back in to help those who really needed the help. This is, we know that COVID punched a massive hole through all of this. But getting through that requires a party to understand the realities of where they are at the moment. And what you saw yesterday, as you looked across, was none. But then it wasn't helped, to be honest, because the thing that they put forward was not, in fact, a reform at all. It was a Treasury-inspired top slice. And the problem when you do that is there are genuine people in that group that they're about to take the money off who really have lifelong and serious conditions. This is not the end of the benefit system that has people who've come on for next to no particular issue. We put forward at the Centre for Social Justice a programme to say, no, what you do is you go down to the mental health area in welfare, the depression, the anxiety, all those areas. You've got to cut the flow off into the benefit system and get those other people back to work, because work's a health treatment for people with mental health conditions. That is the area to go, and you'd save much more money. We reckoned you would save over around about £9 billion, but you'd do it in a fair way. They got those who shouldn't have been on the benefit in the first place out of the benefits and back into work. That's the critical area that we need to sort, not just a sort of casual top slice and hope that's called reform. It's not. It doesn't change how the system fails them.
No, exactly right. And the trouble is, though, they've come about this really from every wrong angle, haven't they? Because Keir Starmer kept talking about the reform to help people get back to work, as if, there were people who wanted more help rather than more benefits. When instead they should have been targeting, surely, those who shouldn't be claiming the benefit, because I'm getting evidence every single day here from people saying that they know people who live in their street, or they know friends of theirs who are getting PIP assistance who don't really need it. And surely that's where you need to go, isn't it?
Too many of the checks and restrictions that we put on previous to COVID were relaxed during COVID, taken away. So all of that let the doors open, and in came people who saw there was a benefit that they could claim, and it's human nature. The worst thing, of course, now we find is that social media makes it very difficult to make changes because the drums beat and everybody knows exactly how to get around it within about sort of a day and a half. They all understand how to do it. And the other one, of course, is if they appeal, lots of people appeal. One of the other big problems is most of the tribunals overturn the original judgment, and they put them back on the benefits. So you've got problems at both ends of this, which needed to be sorted, but none of that was going to be touched yesterday. And even on that basis, they ended up having a rebellion, which is astonishing rebellion, actually, when you think their majority is as big as it is.
It is amazing. But also what's happened as a result of it is that nobody now is willing to have the conversation that there might well be some undeserving benefit claimants. That's not really being discussed anymore, certainly not by the government and certainly not by the backbenchers. The backbench rebellion types are all saying, practically everybody, apart from maybe one or two miscreants, is getting the benefit they deserve. So they're not even willing to countenance the conversation.
Yeah, it was, I've been around in Parliament a little while and I've seen plenty of U-turns, let me tell you. The tire screeching marks outside Westminster, would blacken the road, frankly. But this last few months has, I think, been unprecedented. I've never seen a government come into power with a huge majority like this and not at least be able to carry their backbenchers on relevant changes that need to be happening for at least 2 years, 2.5 years. You normally end up with this sort of rebellion, you know, in your third and fourth years, when people have had enough and you've got a lot of disgruntled people who got sacked from their jobs or never got jobs, etc. But this, right at the beginning of a parliament, is unprecedented. And it does actually, I'm afraid, when you sweep away all of the welfare words, it comes down to one single fact. Downing Street is not respected and has no control over their party at the moment, which is astonishing, absolutely astonishing after an election last year.
Well, indeed. And if the Prime Minister of the day has no authority over his own party, he then really doesn't have any authority over the country, does he? What does that mean for his longevity, do you think?
Well, the reality is they're never so high as they don't come crashing down at some point. It happens to all of the great leaders. But Keir Starmer hasn't had the chance.
I'm not sure he's one of them
right now to demonstrate that he's a great leader. Quite the opposite in many senses. So what you've got here is this, again, is unprecedented. The fact is, they have a massive majority, and they assumed, I think, yesterday that they could just bulldoze this all through, even though, in my book, it was completely the wrong set of reforms. It wasn't going to change anything. It was just a sort of temporary cut that they could announce out in the budget at the end of the year as saving some money. I mean, they screwed up in the budget. All this goes back to the original budget that's put taxes up on working people, on businesses, etc. All of that has got huge damage. We've now made the recession, as it were, worse. We've got big business leaders leaving the country. We got rid of the non-dom stuff. That was a disaster. People who'd stayed over here spent their money here. So what's happening at the moment is it's not at the end of the danger. I mean, the truth is this is going to get a whole lot worse. We're going to end up in a spiral with inflation, high taxes, and no growth. And this will lead, as it's already beginning to job losses and to businesses shutting down, either abandoning the UK or just simply unable to trade anymore. And that is a desperately dangerous situation. And now when people look around and they see a government that's supposed to be able to control itself and get jobs done, as the IFS said today, it calls into question now their ability to do any change or any reform that's relevant to actually making the UK work again.
It is extraordinary how quickly the government has kind of failed to act on so many different areas, and how almost every single aspect and every department of government now is in real trouble.
It's completely, and as I said, when you come into office,
really, isn't it?
It's like GPs and doctors. They have this oath, and basically the rule is do none harm.
Yeah.
Okay, do none harm. In other words, if you don't know what to do, don't do anything is better than doing something which is so risky. Well, what did they do when they came in? The budget will go down in history, I think, as one of the worst budgets ever. It made assumptions about the economy which turned out to be incorrect. It plunged us into further debt. And it's meant that businesses now, smaller businesses particularly, part-time workers can't be taken on because they put the threshold down to £5,000 earnings, which means part-time work is almost off the agenda. And also, you can't employ any extra people. So even if you had more business, you probably won't be able to fulfill it. That is a doom loop, frankly, which we've now seemed to have got ourselves into.
Yeah, incredible. Let me just ask you one final question before I let you go, because I know it's a subject close to your heart. You tweeted out yesterday, the UK government states Russia, North Korea and Iran are threats to the UK, but China is simply a challenge. Do you think that's because they're trying desperately to sort of keep in with them for commercial purposes?
Yeah, but the trouble is they're not going to get any money from China. This is a pathetic nonsense they're in at the moment. They are literally on bended knee to China now. We know that Russia's a threat. It's invaded Ukraine, and it's threatening us. It does cyber attacks on us all the time. We know that Iran is a threat to everybody. If they get nuclear weapons, what a disaster. North Korea now has been granted by Russia the technology to launch ballistic missiles from under the sea. That is a very, very dangerous moment, and they will be able to target most countries in the world. But the real problem is China's behind all of this because they pay the Russians to continue the war. They've been supplying them with other weaponry through North Korea, and they threaten us. They cyber attack us all the time. They've created genocide. They threatened Taiwan. They've taken over the South China Seas. They're building up their military at a rate of knots, now probably the biggest navy in the world. Their view is to become the dominant country in the world, and we don't think that's a threat to everything that we believe in. You know, it's astonishing. And so this is all about saying to China, oh, no, please come and give us some money. We're desperate. All they're going to do Mike, is they're going to dump their cheap cars, cheap batteries, cheap Volta arrays, and also slab steel if they can just manage to shut the blast furnace down finally, and we'll be essentially a colony of China in the next 5 to 10 years if this government doesn't get its act together and recognise that President Xi will simply brush us aside if we don't stand up to him now.
Yeah, extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. Great to talk to you, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith. Thank you very much indeed. Former Conservative Party leader talking there about China and their cars flooding into this country. Of course, we're told that if you've got a Chinese electric car, don't park it anywhere near a government building because it might be eavesdropping on it. But we can still buy the cars, though. That's all right, then. Let's get a voice note from Darren.
Morning, Mike. This makes me sick. You know, over a year and a half ago, I broke my back in an accident, and I was told I'd never walk again. I severed my spinal cord, spent nearly a year in hospital, had to claim PIP for about 4 months, said, sod this, I'm off, back to work, and now I'm a lorry driver, working 12-hour shifts. I can't be dealing with that, claiming benefits and stuff, and happy days.
Amazing. Darren, what a great story. Broke his back in hospital for a year. He's now back working. Incredible. Charlie says, I have hyperthyroidism and sciatica. Not once have I asked to be signed off for it so I can claim PIP. My neighbour recently got a PIP claim. There is nothing wrong with her other than that she is a druggie. The woman got a back payment of £4,000. She put on her forms she has agoraphobia and is scared to leave the house. Well, this is the thing. You know, you put that down, you get the money. It's absolutely nonsensical. Absolutely crazy. Coming up, though, we'll talk to Jack Elson because he says in The Sun today on page 10, a great piece, Keir's climb down on a key policy means that he's not in charge of Britain anymore. It's all down to the rebels now. Brilliant. 49 of them. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:36. I'm Mike Graham. Sarah says this. Morning, Mike. Sarah in Birmingham here. And there you have it. Ellie clowns working from reports and not living in the real world, listening and talking to actual people. She'd argue that grass isn't green if a report told her so. And Rachel says, just watching you cross-examine that green lady, I was thinking I'd love to see Starmer as a guest on your show. Yeah, well, about as much chance of that happening as the moon turning blue, I think. Let's have a voice note on Elle.
My friends who have both lived in Milton Keynes all their lives and have horses, which is a big upheaval, they're on about 200 grand a year. They've sold their house, they've gone to live in Spain. So there you go. They're not millionaires, but the upheaval for them is vast. Can't stand it anymore, they've gone.
So many people telling me that story. So many people are leaving this country. Jack Elsom's here. We're going to talk to him in 1 second. Just a bit of breaking news, though. The fault at the Heathrow electrical substation, you might remember a few months ago, which caused a fire, was first detected 7 years ago. And apparently it wasn't fixed. Brilliant. It says the report says the fire was most likely caused by moisture entering the substation. Well, we've got a very good way of curing that. If you've got any moisture in your substation, you know what to do. Have a listen.
Fixing the foundations is like finding damp in your wall. You can paint over it and get the hairdryer out and dry it. All done that. Hope it goes away. Or you can strip it out, rip out the plaster and deal with the problem once and for all.
Yep, they can do that. Get the old hairdryer out. We've all done it, Jack. Very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Yes, we have. And I think Keir Starmer vowed to end what he called the sticking plaster politics to Britain. Well, yesterday he opened up the plaster packet, emptied out all the plasters and tried to stick as many as he could to hold together his welfare package. It's absolutely shambolic.
It really is. And I mean, talking about sorting out the problem once and for all, he's now created a bigger problem. I mean, who on earth sets out to reform welfare and ends up not only not reforming welfare, but passing a bill which ends up costing more money rather than saving us money?
Well, this is it. He's got two issues, really. He's got a political issue, first of all, because it's clear now that he is no longer in control of large swathes of his party. His authority is completely shot to pieces, and it will make it incredibly difficult to push through any radical reform over the next 4 years, because his rebels now, and the 49 people that rebelled yesterday actually underestimates the size of the rebellion, because those 120 initial rebels that forced these concessions are going to now think that if they kick up a stink about something, then Keir Starmer will buckle at the first sign of trouble. He's also then got, obviously, the economic issue, which this problem has left, because we had £5 billion of pretty modest savings to a welfare bill, which is going to spiral to about £100 billion in sickness benefits by the end of the decade. But now we're seeing that actually they're going to make no savings whatsoever.
Right.
Stephen Timms, the welfare minister, yesterday couldn't say how much they're going to save, and that is because the IFS are pointing out today it's going to be nothing. If anything, this review might end up costing a bit more money, which means that Rachel Reeves is left with a massive black hole in her finances, which I think a lot of people will think is probably quite ironic. And clearly, the old Labour way is to reach for tax rises, and that's the sort of mood music which we're getting now. And where these two issues will really collide, I think the economics and the politics, is that if Rachel Reeves comes back for more tax rises in the autumn budget after explicitly saying that last autumn's one was a once-in-a-parliament job, needed to fix the foundations as Keir described, then voters will not forgive them and they will be in a whole new world of political pain.
I don't think many people are ready either to pay any more taxes. I mean, you know, ordinary working people, as he likes to call them, have literally had enough. They sort of limit up. You know, you just heard that voice note from Elle on friends of hers who've lived in this country for years, leaving the country, going to live in Spain. You know, it's not just a millionaire drain. It's an awful lot of ordinary middle-class people who can, if they're able to get out of the country, are going.
Yeah, and totally. And this whole fudge about saying that we're not going to put taxes up on working people. Well, if you saddle business with an extra £25 billion, who do you think is going to end up paying that? You know, the businesses will pass on the cost to consumers, and it's ordinary people who watch this show and read the Sun newspaper who will be the ones paying the price. And they're absolutely sick to the back teeth of it. Yeah. It's not just over the past year, it's over the past 14 years, really. They've seen tax rises steadily climb to the highest in peacetime. And we are now a country essentially stuck in this high-tax, low-growth doom loop in which the economy is absolutely on its knees. And if Rachel Reeves thinks coming back for even more tax rises in the autumn to essentially pay for their muck-up yesterday in the whole welfare rebellion, then they're going to finally become very unpopular. But I'll tell you who doesn't believe that at the moment is Labour rebels. It's all about spend, spend, spend. Yesterday, even Keir Starmer was doing a sort of big G up to his cabinet yesterday, and he rattled off all of the things which they've done, whether it was investment in the NHS, investment in transport, infrastructure overhauls, more money for social housing. In other words, a big shopping list, but they're very good at spending money. And, you know, anyone can spend money and go push the economy further into the red. But at some point, difficult decisions have to be taken. And yesterday was one of them. Cutting this massive welfare bill, one of the major pressing issues of our time. And rather than rising to the occasion, Keir Starmer ducked the challenge and he gave in to these rebels. And they're now going to be thinking, well, if we kick up as much of a fuss as we do on that to other issues, then we could do it. And mark my words, the 2-child benefit cap will be next.
Yeah. And the problem is that, you know, it's all very well saying that they've achieved things, and, you know, whenever he wheels himself out in front of a TV camera, he'll say, oh, yeah, you know, this is our finest moment, and we've built this, and we've done that, and we've started. You know, I'm reading the Times this morning, the ministers are preparing to relaunch a 10-year plan designed to make NHS care better, faster and more efficient. You know, he keeps telling us that he's fixing the NHS. He keeps telling us that, you know, they've got 3 million more appointments now than they had this time last year. And yet it's still not any good. And they're saying this morning that basically health chiefs are now putting in minimum waiting times for people just to make ends meet.
Yeah, a lot of the time we hear them talk. They're writing plans, they're drafting reviews, they're launching new quangos, you know. And this is this is meant to be achievements. People actually want action.
Yeah.
They've been a year into the job now. They have 14 years in opposition to come up with policies to implement on day one.
Yeah.
And it seems that they sort of come into government and they've launched a bunch of reviews, whereas actually people want to see change. That's what they were promised in the election. That's why they won that majority. They said to people with a straight face that if you vote for us, then things will get better. And at the moment, whether it's whether it's in all kinds of metrics, they're not getting better. And I think people can see that's what it is. And every time they see a minister telling them they've never had it so good, people just think, well, I'm not feeling that whatsoever.
No.
So they're in a really dangerous place at the moment.
Yeah, I think so. And what do you think that means for the longevity of either Reeves and or Starmer?
Well, I think it's one and the same question, really. I think that they are so joined at the hip in terms of their outlook. I don't think that Keir Starmer can jettison his Chancellor without being out the door very quickly himself, because that budget in the autumn, I think while obviously she made the big calls in it, was as much as his. He went out, shed loads of political capital defending it. They clearly both massively regret it, and they've said so publicly with obviously, you know, winter fuel and some of the rest of it. In terms of changing a leadership, it's very difficult to change the leadership of the Labour Party. You need a lot of people on board to do it. However, you know, never say never. Who knows when it comes to these things? At the moment, I do think that while there is a large element of the parliamentary party very cheesed off by Keir Starmer, there is still enough loyalists in their ranks to keep him in post. Remember, a lot of these people, the Starmerites who came in 2024, yes, now many of them are looking at their seats, these MRP polls that keep coming out, showing that they're going to be toast to reform at the next election. But I think at the moment, just about, there's still enough of them to keep Starmer and Reeves in post for a while to come. However, that could only change, and Starmer needs to get an urgent grip, because at the moment the polls are showing, you know, things aren't getting better for him very quickly. And to be 1 year into your premiership, I think the anniversary is on Friday, and to be in such a bad, invidious position as this, it's not looking good for him.
It really isn't. And will he throw Liz Kendall under the bus? Will he do some kind of reshuffle to try and save face as well?
Well, there's only a few levers that he has at the moment to actually turn things around in these sort of big reset moments. You know, one is a budget. Obviously, we have that in the autumn. One is a big number 10 clear out, you know, shifting around senior staff in the operation. Now, I don't think at the moment we're going to be seeing movements from people like, you know, Morgan McSweeney, the chief of staff, who's taking a bit of flack, but actually commands a lot of loyalty in number 10. And the other main lever you have usually is a reshuffle. Now, at the moment, we're told not to expect any plans for a reshuffle, although, you know, they always say that. And so, you know, I don't sense we're going to get one imminently. I might be totally wrong on that one. But, you know, maybe later down the line. I think Keir Starmer beforehand said he wants to keep people in positions for a long time, but he might just feel that things are going so dire now, he's got no choice but to push that button.
Yeah, I mean, it is absolutely dire. It's dreadful. Great to talk to you, Jack. Thanks very much indeed. Jack Elson, political editor of The Sun there, with his piece saying that basically the Labour rebels are now in charge of the country. It's incredible, isn't it? Less than a year in, and it's all gone horribly wrong. It's all gone to pot, as it were. Let's have a look at what's happening on the Sun letters page today. People are getting exercised this morning about illegal migrants, and according to Karina from Flintshire, it's great that the police have finally made arrests over illegal migrants working as food delivery drivers. We really don't want to give migrants any more incentives to cross the channel in dinghies and make a life in the UK. They're already provided with accommodation and financial support to cover living costs. It's April Fool's Day every day in the UK. We are the laughing stock of the world. At last, says Peter in Bedfordshire, the police are starting to tackle illegal migrants working for food delivery companies
by using other employees' accounts. But why are the police not nabbing these people who are selling on their account details to enable these workers? They are surely breaking employment, health and safety and tax evasion laws. Well, you would think so. We'll keep a check on that. A lot of people getting very worked up on that Big Sun story. Let's get a voice note from Phil.
Morning, Mike. Phil from Peterborough. I've got an idea. It's not evidence-based, but it's a great idea. And that is that all politicians are absolutely useless.
Yeah, I think there is some evidence to have that actually proven to be correct, Phil, it has to be said. One here from Steve in Leicestershire. Morning, Mike. My 19-year-old son works for a company over the internet, so he can work anywhere. He said this country was going down the pan last year and decided to leave the country in March this year and said he might not come back. He spent time in Montenegro, in Serbia, and is currently living in Bali and extending his visa. I don't blame him. I've also told my 2 daughters to look at moving abroad as well. I mean, this is the thing. An awful lot of young people are doing it because an awful lot of young people don't see any great ideas of work that they can do in this country. Francis from Lee says, in Greater Manchester, I was diagnosed with epilepsy 11 years ago. I claimed PIP after being assessed in person and was successful. A year later, during the Atos healthcare scandal, I was reassessed and told by the assessor that I would no longer qualify for PIP because I did not show the cognitive signs and symptoms of someone with epilepsy and that I was clean-shaven and well-kept. Well, this is the thing. Whenever they try and clamp down on welfare benefits, they always end up getting the wrong people. But nevertheless, you still have to do it in order to try and get to the point where you're not spending as much money. That's the point, surely, the bottom line. Coming up, we're going to speak to LaDonna Harvey about the latest from the world of Donald Trump.
Do you in Reform find it extraordinary that a man that waltzed into 10 Downing Street not 12 months ago, Zia, with a huge majority, has misread the situation, or rather the vibe in this country so dramatically on so many occasions, this being the latest example?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, but I'm not actually that surprised, to be honest, Jeremy, because it's in keeping with his entire prime ministership. You know, he, as you said, he waltzed into number 10 with a walloping majority. I mean, it's actually extraordinary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. Phil says, Mike, my wife and I left for Cyprus. We draw £12,000 each from private pensions to escape Reeve. She nicked £10,000 this year. Budgeted for 8 years until we get our OAP pension if Starmer hasn't stopped it. Both worked since we were 16. No benefits from the government. True that. Let's get a voice note from Mark.
Hiya, Mike. Mark from Manchester. I think we should go back to the mobility cars, what they had in the 70s and 80s. What my granddad had. Three-wheeler, blue, sliding door. That's all you need to get about to the shops. If you need anything else, pay for it yourself.
Well said, Mark. Mark in Manchester. Yeah. Rodney! Yeah, I mean, it just makes you think of the Peckham plonkers, doesn't it? Let's talk to LaDonna Harvey from the Arizona Morning News, KTAR in Phoenix, a beautiful part of the world. Donald Trump's been visiting the new detention centre in Florida, which is full of alligators, apparently. They don't need to put any fences up because there's a load of alligators around it. LaDonna, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
It's a fantastic idea, this. I mean, I'm sure we could do something similar up in the north of Scotland.
Do you have alligators in the north of Scotland?
We don't, but we do have the Loch Ness Monster, you know.
True.
We could have him sort of patrolling the waters or something like that. Let's have a look at Donald Trump talking about how to outsmart an alligator.
You know, snakes are fast, but alligators are... We're going to teach them how to run away from an alligator, okay? If they escape prison. How to run away. Don't run in a straight line. Run like this. And you know what? Your chances go up about 1%. Okay? Not a good thing.
Sometimes it's just hard to believe that he comes out with this stuff, but it's great, isn't it? Very entertaining. How to run away from an alligator if you're escaping.
He is an entertainer, absolutely. You know, it's interesting because they're building this detention center in Florida, which is the home of Ron DeSantis, whom he does not like, and DeSantis doesn't like him, and, you know, is now giving migrants advice on how to run away from said detention center. I don't know if you could write it any better than what it is.
Right. Yeah, I don't think you can. I mean, as soon as I saw this story that they were building this thing, I think it was a week or so ago, I just thought, what a brilliant idea, because they don't actually have to spend that much money on it. They just put them in the middle of this alligator-infested swamp, and they're not going to go anywhere.
No, they're not. You know, this is the Everglades of Florida. They call it Alligator Alley. It is. I've driven through one time and had no desire to get out of my car at all. It's a very backwoods sort of movie set of a place. Right. That is filled with things that want to kill you. It's Australia, but in Florida.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense.
In a more sort of tightly knit community as well, because
very concentrated area.
Yeah, absolutely right. What's going on with him and Elon Musk, by the way? Because he was talking about setting Doge on Musk. Have a look at this.
Right.
We might have to put Doge on Elon. You know what Doge is? Doge is the monster that might have to go back and eat Elon. Wouldn't that be terrible? He gets a lot of subsidies, Peter. But Elon's very upset that the EV mandate is going to be terminated. And you know what? When you look at it, not everybody wants an electric car. I don't want an electric car. I want to have maybe gasoline, maybe electric, maybe a hybrid, maybe someday a hydrogen. If you have a hydrogen car, it has one problem. It blows up, you know? So I'm going to give that one to Peter. I'm going to let Peter test it out.
Sorry. I'm just in a very funny mood this morning. I mean, it was not that long ago that Elon Musk gave him a Tesla. Do you remember? He made a big thing of it, and they went out and drove it together in the White House.
Right. You know, they were great friends for a while their ideas aligned, and then there was a divergence. And I think part of it was the electric car, but part of it is also the big, beautiful bill that just made it out of the Senate and is about to go back into the House. Elon Musk thinks that it just saddles Americans with too much debt. And so he and Trump have had a real falling out over this thing. And it's it's gotten ugly on Twitter and X and whatever other social medias they use. They dialed it back a little bit, but now it's coming out again as this bill has made its way out of the Senate. Elon's gotten much more vocal about what he thinks is wrong with it.
Right. But the problem with electric cars, and I mean, Donald Trump's right in a way, a lot of people don't want an electric car. I'm pretty sure you don't want one. I don't want one. And also, they're becoming less and less sort of well used, if you like. I mean, Nissan over in this country has just fired about 250, 300 people from their plant in Sunderland because the electric car market is kind of slowing down. Because, you know, unfortunately, it hasn't, you know, the wherewithal to drive these things around outside of a city hasn't got any better. So, you know, and people, we've had a very hot spell here this week. People were telling me, taxi drivers who drive electric taxis were saying, you know, as soon as you put the air conditioning on, the thing only goes about 3 feet.
Right. I wouldn't have one here in Phoenix because you don't want to drive around in 115-degree heat and get stuck somewhere.
Right.
Other people seem to do it and they do just fine. You still have very little infrastructure for these things and it's not improving.
Right.
And the mileage isn't improving and the cars themselves aren't improving. And when they catch on fire, and they do, you can't put them out.
Right.
So
that's the problem.
We're still having a few issues with electric cars. It's, if one of these days they get great, sure, I'll pull the red Barchetta into the garage and get an electric car. But until then, I'm staying in the vet. And shut up and leave me alone.
Exactly. But this is the thing. I mean, I don't understand why people like Ferrari and Maserati are making, electric cars that don't make any noise. You're going to go in, well, surely that's the point of having one of these cars. You don't want one that doesn't make any noise.
Part of the joy of my life, Mike, is getting up in the morning, having enough coffee to quell my rage, and going out to my garage and starting my incredibly loud car and pissing off every neighbor I have. It's a great joy.
Absolutely.
And I won't let you take it from
me.
Well
said. Thank you very much indeed. Long way it continue. Very nice to see you. LaDonna Harvey. That's the third mention of that word this morning. We're really going for it. I'm sorry about that if any of you were offended, but there we are. This is what happens when you live in the modern world. Coming up in the next hour, what are we doing? We're going to be talking to Gareth Davis MP, Shadow Financial Secretary to the Treasury. Baroness Coffey is here as well. And also Lord Toby Young. It's a big hour coming up. And we're also going to talk to Reform's newest Westminster City Councillor, Layla Cunningham. We've got plenty more of your messages to read. I-Class number 10's a hostel as it's full of unwanted people who need to move out, says John in Blackpool. Cheers. Yeah, I couldn't disagree. I couldn't agree with that more, actually. More coming up after the news. Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental...
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, now, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to 3 minutes past 9. It's looking a bit grim outside, you know. We had this massive heat wave which resulted in Wimbledon, I think, having its two hottest days to start the tournament ever, Monday and Tuesday. There's a bit of rain falling, I think, now in south-east London, or London, we should say, in the south-east. If you're looking forward to it getting a bit cooler, I think you may well get that wish coming up later on today. We've got loads to talk about in the final hour of the show. We're going to go live down to College Green in Westminster shortly to find out what the take is there on the morning after the night before. Last night, of course, Keir Starmer was humiliated by his own party. Starmer's benefits bill turns to farce, it says on the front page of the Telegraph. He set out to launch a welfare reform bill, but instead he ended up cutting it back and cutting it back and cutting it back and making so many concessions to some left-wing backbench Labour rebels that, in fact, the welfare reform isn't happening at all. There's not only going to be no welfare reform, but what he is going to do is going to actually cost even more money than they're spending on it already. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. We've been talking with various people over the course of the last couple of hours, including one Green MP for Herefordshire, I think it was, called Ellie Chown. She was banging on about the best way to actually get the economy straightened out is to put a load of wealth taxes on people. Well, here's Steve. Let's see what he thinks.
Morning, mate. Great show. When you hear these ministers going on about a wealth tax, that's just an admission that you've failed as a government. You might as well just have Bob Geldof in charge. Just give us your flipping money.
It's a very good policy, probably better than Pat McFadden, who was on the air just a while ago, who is, of course, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. He was asked, how is he going to pay for this new reform bill?
While I accept that this decision yesterday has financial consequences, it is one moving part in many moving parts, and it's not right for me to speculate on how all those moving parts fit together in any particular fiscal event.
Well, surely it is for him not to speculate, but to actually explain how this fiscal event will come about, because how on earth is this government going to pay for a welfare bill which is rising up to in excess of £100 billion a year, when in fact they don't seem to have any methodology whatsoever of cutting it back. They were supposed to be saving £5 billion. Now they're not saving anything at all. 0344 499 1000. We'll talk about Tim Davie as well. He's still running the BBC. A lot of people don't think he should be. And also, what about the migrant crisis? 20,000 this year alone and rising, right? 43,000 plus on the migrant tracker. We've got that absolutely right now. Managed to persuade the people who make the migrant tracker to up the ante a little bit. 43,224. There you go. As of today. But the front page of The Sun says, buggy useless. They've got buggies now on the French coast and they're trying to stop the migrants coming, but they're still not stopping them. They're just watching them from a buggy instead of on foot. 0344 499 1000. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. And I'm sorry to keep doing this, but I can't stop doing it because I have to tell you, this is breaking news this morning. The fault at the Heathrow electrical substation, which caused the fire, was first detected 7 years ago, but was never fixed. The report says that the fire was most likely caused by moisture entering the substation. Well, if only they'd listened to Keir Starmer, they would have known how to fix it.
Fixing the foundations is like finding damp in your wall. You can paint over it and get the hairdryer out and dry it. All done that. Hope it goes away. Or you can strip it out, rip out the plaster and deal with the problem once and for all.
I think he read that out to himself before he actually read it out loud, because he said he doesn't always read his scripts. Just before we speak to Gareth Davis, MP, Shadow Financial Secretary to the Treasury, have a look at this. Year of chaos coming up on Friday.
1 year on.
And it's already falling apart.
We did it! Smash the people smuggling gangs.
There is no deterrent.
More and more migrants have come to Britain.
You bought your bins there, Sickia?
And it turns out that Keir Starmer had a wardrobe busier than David Beckham's.
If it's the right kind of prisoner, Starmer and the gang can find them a cell.
One explosive hour.
U-turn after U-turn.
I'm frightened about how bad they are.
Absolute incompetence and deceit.
1 year of chaos.
Only on Talk.
That's 9 p.m. on Friday night. You won't want to miss that. Let's go live now down to College Green. Gareth Davis, MP, Shadow Financial Secretary to the Treasury is there. Gareth, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
What a shambles we wake up to this morning. I mean, I watched it last night with some incredulity, as I'm sure you did. You were probably there. How on earth does a government come up with a welfare reform bill which sets out to reform welfare, ends up not reforming it at all, but ends up then handing us a bill for even more money?
Well, because despite having a supermajority, the Prime Minister's completely lost control of his party. That's purely and simply what happened. We, I think, agree with the Prime Minister's warm words towards reducing the welfare budget, but the reality is that he is completely held hostage by his own MPs. And that's why we saw the spectacle last night, which was a series of U-turns as the night went on, unbelievably. And as a result, as you were saying earlier, this actually, ironically, could end up costing the government more money, not saving money. Even at $5 billion, that was a drop in the ocean. I mean, just to give you an idea, since the pandemic, health and disability benefits have ballooned to the extent that the OBR project that we're going to be spending about $100 billion by 2030 on those benefits. That's more than we spend on defence. It means that £1 in every £4 collected through income tax is going specifically on health and disability benefits. That's clearly unsustainable. We as a party, in the Conservative Party, are united in the need to tackle that, Labour or not.
No, indeed. And what about the performance this morning of Pat McFadden? You know, he's doing the rounds trying to kind of, you know, smooth the feathers and settle everybody down and say that, you know, we're going to go ahead and do whatever it is that we're going to do. But he doesn't yet have an answer as to where the money will come from. He starts talking about moving parts and how, you know, it's not for him to say. Well, surely it is for him to say.
Exactly right. I mean, there's serious consequences as a result of them not moving forward with welfare reforms. You remember that the bill last night was supposed to bring about £5 billion of costed savings. That money needs to be found now by Rachel Reeves, but this is added to the bill because they also U-turned, if you remember, on winter fuel payments, another disaster. That's £1.5 billion extra she's also got to find. And then later down the track, I'm telling you now, the next big issue for the Prime Minister is on the two-child benefit cap. And if he U-turns on that policy, that's a £3.5 billion spending commitment. And so come the autumn budget, what this means, Mike, is essentially, despite promising she wouldn't, she said she's not going to come back for more borrowing or more taxation, she's going to have to raise taxes. And that is going to hurt families and businesses in an already very difficult circumstance after she raised national insurance contributions. When, you know, again, she said she wouldn't do that either. So I'm afraid to say, I don't want to be too gloomy, but this is a really bad situation, Mike.
It is terrible.
Up and down the country.
It is terrible. And I mean, more and more people are telling me that they're leaving the country, that they know people that are leaving the country. And these are all people who contribute to the tax base of this country as well, by the way. You know, these are not millionaires we're talking about. These are ordinary working people, you know, who may be, you know, close to retirement age, or they've got kids who have decided that, you know, they've left university, but there's nothing for them here. They're just going to leave and go and work somewhere else. You know, it's a very worrying trend, because what we're going to end up with is more people on benefits and fewer people actually paying taxes to cover it.
Absolutely, and you're totally right. Every conversation I have at the moment with business leaders is about the fact that they know hundreds of people who are leaving the country to go to Milan, go to Dubai, go to the United States, go elsewhere because they feel that the levels of tax in this country now are completely unsustainable and unaffordable. What that means is that the people who actually help pay for our public services are leaving the country at a time when we're seeing record arrivals on dinghies. You know, I mean, I don't need to tell you, you've reported at length on this. We're now seeing 20,000 people come across on dinghies, and 95% of them are being housed in costly hotels. And so we've got this combination of the people who pay for public services are leaving, and the ones who are draining our public services are coming at a pace that we've never seen before.
It is absolutely extraordinary, isn't it? And all of the people coming in will eventually be either working illegally or on benefits of one kind or another, whether it's because the money that's being used to keep them in hotels is coming from the taxpayer, or whether the money put them in houses is coming from the taxpayer. And the Mail says it this morning. Basically, all of these people coming in, we don't know who they are, we don't know where they're from, but they'll all have to be fed, housed and given free healthcare, and most of them will never leave.
But can you blame them? There's no deterrent. There's absolutely no deterrent. They said that they would smash the gangs. Well, I actually think the gangs are having a smashing time. You know, it's just unbelievable. There's no deterrent whatsoever. They scrapped the Rwanda scheme, which didn't even get a chance to get started because Labour opposed it every step of the way. They scrapped it just as it was ready to go. And now there's no alternative in place. They need to urgently act to tackle this problem. Enough with the words. Get on with it and stop the boats.
Yeah, exactly right. But they don't seem to have any clue as to how to do that, though. There's pictures on the front page of The Sun today. The French authorities got a new buggy they're riding up and down the beach on, but they're not actually stopping anybody getting into the water. They're not actually stopping anybody getting into the dinghies, and they're certainly not stopping them from getting across the channel. We saw a picture the other day, did we not, Gareth, of a guy sitting at the front of a dinghy, sort of shooting a selfie of himself and filming himself as they were travelling across, you know, what's meant to be a very treacherous crossing. But you can only imagine how many more are going to come over the course of the next couple of months.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And by the way, those buggies and other things that the French have, they're paid for by the British taxpayer. Yeah. That is Labour's answer. It's just to keep giving millions of pounds to the French. What you need is a fundamental policy of deterrence. You've got to say to them that if you come over here illegally, you will be sent elsewhere. If you don't do that, they're going to keep coming over, and that's why we're seeing above 40% increase year on year since Labour came to power of people coming across on the boats. And they're completely deluded. I don't know if you saw Darren Jones, the Chief Secretary of the Treasury, on Question Time. He suggested that it was all women and children coming across.
Yeah.
Well, we know that's not the case. Home Office have been clear that that's not the case. 70% are, you know, young men. So they just are all over the place, whether it's on the economy, whether it's on small boats. Happy 1 year anniversary of Labour government.
Yeah, well, I mean, a year of chaos is what we're calling it. We've got a piece, a little documentary going out at 9 o'clock on Friday night. Another one that I spotted this morning, I don't know if you've seen this in the Times today, NHS patients are facing more delays from the setting of what's being called minimum waiting times by NHS health chiefs. Doctors have warned of patients waiting in pain and fear as clinical decisions were distorted to cut costs and deal with the financial crisis in healthcare. So ministers are now preparing to launch a 10-year plan designed to make care better, faster and more efficient. I was under the impression that Sir Keir Starmer said that one of the things he was most proud of was sorting out the NHS waiting times and getting 3 million more appointments going.
Absolutely right. And if you look at the budgets and the spending review, they're pouring more money into the NHS without actual reform and changes to the system to make it more productive and more efficient. You know, just at the weekend, we had Wes Streeting parading around the studios with his new policy, which is essentially to make supermarkets hide the crisps.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not serious. And so we'll see what he says. I think it's tomorrow he's coming out with this new plan. But so far what we've seen is just a lot of rhetoric, a lot of press releases and an increase in the nanny states. That's not serious, and they need to get on and actually reform the NHS, which is what they told us before the election they would do.
Yeah, well, that would be nice, but they don't seem to be doing much of what they told us they would do, and that seems to be part of the problem. Gareth Davis, thank you very much indeed. Shadow Financial Secretary to the Treasury. Of course, a lot of you asking about this documentary we're doing that goes out on Friday. Stephen Stokes says, Friday at 9, Mike, will I be able to stream that on Saturday morning? I've long since stopped paying the BBC so that I can watch channels that people actually want to watch. Well, of course, it will be available on Friday. That's when it debuts on Friday at 9 p.m. On YouTube as well as on the network. Mike says this one, why did Talk put together the Year of Chaos already? We've got 3 more days to go, so potentially 3,000 more fiascos to cover. Yeah, very good. I get what you're saying there. I'm a heating engineer, says John in Bexley Heath. When I get a call out on a job, it's generally because a moving or a functional part isn't working. I find it, fix it, and get paid. I don't dance around it. Absolutely right. I'm all for proper people claiming PIP, but when you have half a dozen mobility vehicles outside Wetherspoons early morning, it makes you wonder, says Gordon in Staffordshire. And one from Anthony in Bristol. Mike, here's a suggestion about PIP. Take it away from everyone with mental health issues and the money saved can be used to employ more counsellors to get them back to work. Absolutely right. That would be the way to go, wouldn't it? Coming up, we're going to speak to a councillor. She's the newly elected councillor at Westminster. It is Layla Cunningham. She defected from the Tories and she's now part of the reform movement. We'll be hearing from her. Also, don't forget, if you haven't listened to the entire show and you've missed any of it, shame on you for that. But you can get the Morning Glory podcast, which comes out every single weekday around about 10:15, 10:30 every single weekday, Monday to Friday. We're here, of course, from 6 until 10. This is Morning Glory.
They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe it.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel. Broken promises.
Billions blown.
Botched U-turns.
And Britain is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power.
And Britain in freefall. It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 21 minutes past 9. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here. She'll be picking the bones out of what happened last night in Parliament as well. Mike, I left the UK to go and work in Germany in 1997, says Neil. 3 years later, I moved to Zurich. The plan was always to cash in at 65 and move back to the UK as my money would go a lot further there. But now I've reached that point, I've decided to stay in Switzerland. Yes, it's expensive, but things work and you have a government that knows what it's doing. Well, that really does make quite a difference, doesn't it? Morning, Mike. I'm definitely not a millionaire and I will be 72 in November. However, I'm seriously considering leaving this bloody awful country, says Keith in Durham. And Christina in Spain says, morning, Mike. I'm not a millionaire and had plans to move back to the UK last year until that disastrous event on July the 4th. So rather than the UK benefiting from my taxes, the Spanish do, and they're very welcome to it. Unless I can't receive talkTV in Spain, I'm staying. Absolutely. Well, Chrissy, I mean, so many people now just not wanting to live in this country. Let's get a voice note from Mark.
It's Mike from Watford. I'm disabled and I claim PIP. Listening to your show this morning, you've made me feel like a second-class citizen because between you and your contributors, I seem to feel that all PIP claimants are fraudulent and are work shy. Nothing can be further from the truth. I'm 65 years of age. I've worked all my life, paid in every week since I was 15, would you believe? And now I need help. So do I go into the worthy bucket or the unworthy bucket?
Well, Mark, obviously you go into the worthy bucket. You know, we certainly haven't been saying that all PIP claimants are on the fiddle. That's not what we're saying. But what we're saying is that the whole point of welfare and the whole point of the benefit system is exactly for people like you, Mark. People who have paid in all of their lives and who have now found themselves in a position where they need some help. That's what the benefit system is meant to be for. Everybody understands that and everybody thinks that that's the way it should be. But what it shouldn't be is a way of life for people, many of whom have never worked. Many of whom could work, many of whom choose not to work because they get benefits. And that, I think, is the main point of the conversation we're having. I'm sorry if it's made you feel like second class citizens. You shouldn't feel like that. And I certainly don't think we've said anything that should make you feel like that. There are plenty of people that get benefits that deserve them and plenty of people who could claim benefits who don't claim them. But the people we're talking about are the ones who shouldn't be claiming them and who are using what can only be described as, you know, ruses and various different kind of, you know, gaming of the systems to get something that they're not really entitled to. And we can't afford it. It's as simple as that. Let's get a voice note from Hannah.
Mike, great show. Just on people leaving the country. We are early 40s. We've got 2 children. We pay in to the system, have all our lives. Our house is on the market. We're leaving the country. My brother and his wife are leaving London, sick of the high crime, high tax, not being able to live anywhere safe. And when they do have neighbours, they're usually illegals, so they're off. And my younger brother, who is 30, is moving to Canada. So that's an entire family that this country has let down.
That's incredible. And this is the thing. This is not a small thing. You know, we discover stories sometimes by accident on this show, but we've discovered something, I think, this week and in recent times that is a huge story that's much bigger than anything that anybody has ever known about. And that is the number of people leaving this country, not millionaires, ordinary working people who would be contributors to the tax system, who would be people who would be contributors to the general good of the country, who would create jobs, who would create wealth, who would create tax revenue, and who are simply leaving. And you can't replace those people. You can't replace the money either. Ridiculous. Stuart in Perthshire says, I do wish that the Tories would stop saying they scrapped the Rwanda deal, because it was Sunak who scrapped the Rwanda deal by calling an election when he had no need to for several months. Never forget it was the Tories who inflicted Labour upon us. I think that's right. Tony in Barrow says, Mike, when an alcoholic druggie has a breakdown and spends 2 or 3 weeks in a local mental institution, they are given disability PIP when they get out. It's a regular scam. Yeah, well, I mean, I think that is part of the problem. It's far too easy to get. That seems to be a situation that many of you have said. One from somebody who doesn't want to give their name here. A family member was claiming benefits due to anxiety and depression causing him to be unable to work. But running a business, a friend told on him and he lost some benefits, so he got his wife to be his carer and was rewarded with more benefits than before, and an SUV hybrid mobility car. He still runs a successful business too from his council house. I have PTSD and work every day. This country is mental. Unbelievable. Let's talk to Stuart, who's in Hertfordshire. Hello, Stuart.
Mike.
Good morning to you, sir. What can I do for you?
Yes, I've just been listening to your show this morning and talk about the mobility scheme card.
Yeah.
I've got multiple sclerosis and therefore sort of get PIP and a mobility scheme car.
Yeah.
I'd just like to say that I think while the benefit system does need to be trimmed, we also do need to consider the people that genuinely sort of need the help.
Yeah. I don't think anybody's not considering those people, Stuart.
No, I think some of the talk about it can focus on the people who might be abusing the system. Obviously, with my condition, I've got a lot of appointments. You know, like just this week, I've got an ultrasound scan. I've got to go into London Hospital tomorrow. Next week, I've got an MRI. Prior to getting my mobility scheme car, I was having to use hospital transport. So that involved an ambulance coming to pick me up, take me to my appointment, then take me home afterwards.
Right.
And once we take that into account, I think, you know, actually my mobility scheme car, as well as obviously giving me my independence, might actually be a saving to the taxpayers. And I work full time. You know, it's enabled me to keep my job and keep paying into the system. And so that's all really. I think there's, when you look at the broader potential savings that it could be offering the NHS, it is something to take into account.
Sure. No, of course. And are you able to work at all, Stuart, or not?
I do, yes. I still work. I work in finance. It's enabled me to keep my job, as well as, you know, enabled me to do the school run, attend hospital appointments. So the difference it makes to my life is sort of incalculable, really.
Right. So you're the person that PIP was designed for. So, you know, you're the person that makes it make sense. But there's an awful lot of people who I'm getting told about who clearly do not benefit in the same way that you do, and they shouldn't be getting it, because at the end of the day, we can't afford to pay for it. You know.
Completely agree. I do agree that there's definitely a lot of waste in the system, but obviously for somebody in my condition, you know, with the talk about the reform of PIP, it's scary, you know, the idea that actually I might be forced into a room with somebody who's going to decide, actually, no, you're not eligible anymore.
Yeah.
And yeah,
and that's exactly what they shouldn't be doing, Stuart. Listen, thank you very much indeed for your call. Stuart there wanted to make the point that, you know, he does work, he does get PIP allowance, he does get a mobility card because he needs it, and that's fine. That's exactly as it should be. This is it's a big story though that we're going to be talking about for a long time. Lady Cunningham's here though. Lady, very good morning to you.
Very good morning to you.
Welcome to the home of common sense
the home
and morning glory. You're a new Westminster. Well, you're not a new Westminster City Councillor. You're a defecting Westminster City Councillor, right?
New Reform.
You're a new Reform. So what made you decide to move away from the Tories?
It's what they've done in the past 14 years. You know, highest tax burden. I'm was a tax-cutting Conservative. We have the highest tax burden since World War II. Yeah. Declining public service, declining private sector, so we can't pay for it. Crime is soaring, chaos at the border. I mean, you name it. Yeah. I couldn't, when I spoke to voters at the doorstep, I couldn't defend it anymore.
No. And that's the trouble, isn't it? The trouble is Labour have come in and managed to make it worse as well, which they didn't think was possible.
Especially not that quickly.
No.
I mean, they've gone hard and fast. I can't believe what they've done yesterday or what they've done so far.
Yeah, it is incredible, isn't it? And what happened last night has kind of put the cherry on the cake, really. I mean, just as they're coming up to a one-year anniversary, here they are, sort of having gone in with an idea of reforming welfare, making a complete dog's breakfast of it, and now it looks like it's going to cost us even more money not to reform it.
I know, it's a welfare expansion as opposed to a welfare reduction.
Yeah.
I know, I remember, didn't Keir Starmer say country before party?
He did.
I mean, this is obviously party before country. I mean, they are refusing, I think, that shows that they're refusing to even back the concept of welfare reform.
Yeah, exactly. Well, now we've got a situation where the backbench MPs are running the country.
Yeah.
They've now said, we don't even want to talk about the people who might not be eligible for this, because obviously everybody deserves what they've got.
Yeah.
Which clearly isn't the case.
No, it's definitely not the case. I mean, the bill's going to go up to about £360 billion. And nobody's questioning why claimants have gone up by 75% over the past few years.
Right.
Approval rates has gone up by 80%. You've got to ask yourself why. We learned that assessors were incentivised to approve them because it was just quicker. You got a bonus if you approved so many. It was done 10-minute phone calls. And it's not their money to give away.
No.
It's our money.
Exactly.
Every pound that is redistributed by the government is taken from the taxpayer or is borrowed. And when someone's working hard, taking time out of their family, doing a job they don't like, but they've taken that personal responsibility, and they see someone who's off work getting paid for mild anxiety.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
No.
And
surely it's not that difficult to make that delineation. Stuart, who just called us, said, look, I'm worried because, you know, I've got MS. He obviously is in need of help. But he works, he still does a job.
Yes.
And he gets a car because he has a lot of hospital appointments. Nobody's going to argue with that being a problem. It's not a problem. But people who don't need it shouldn't be getting it. It should be much easier to stop them from getting it.
I mean, you remember that shocking fact that 2,000 people were signing on a day under the Tories.
Right.
Now it's 3,000.
Yeah.
And a safety net that catches everyone, irrelevant of need, often doesn't leave enough for those that really need it.
Right.
A government should give you the tools to succeed, because you should rely on yourself, because only you know what you need, when and where.
Yeah.
As we've seen, the government giveth and the government taketh.
Yes.
But of course the government's there for those that need it. But when the welfare bill is so bloated, it takes the narrative away from those that really need it. And it takes the empathy away, as we've seen.
Exactly. But there has to be an easier way, surely, than this government has come up with. They haven't really come up with anything at all, but there must be an easier way to be able to assess people properly and go, you know, I mean, we're hearing stories, and I know some of them might be apocryphal, but, you know, somebody's getting a claim for acne.
Yes.
Or somebody else is getting a claim for, you know, agoraphobia. But we've had people messaging us all day today saying, you know, I've got a drug addict who lives next door. She says she's agoraphobic. She can't go out, so she gets PIP help and all sorts of benefits to go along with it. And then she gets her house paid for. She gets her council tax paid. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. And the problem is that benefits in those instances, it should be a bridge, an income bridge. It shouldn't be long-term income source. It should be a springboard.
I mean, should we have something like the Americans have, which is a sort of time limit, where if you're on unemployment in America, you get 6 months unemployment, and then you have to get a job? It's as simple as that.
It's as simple as that, because if you refuse a job, so many of us are working a job they don't want, because they've taken that responsibility to take care of their family. So if you get a job offer and you say no and you're still claiming benefits, it's just not fair.
Right.
But we have to make it a springboard. We have to. So there are ways to get people out of work. We're not training people for the skills of the future, the digital skills of the future. I mean, the digital age is coming. We need people to be AI native, to know how to work with AI, and we just don't have those skills here. So that would be a programme that reform would bring, is to help people back into work.
Well, we're hearing a lot, again, of young people who are leaving the country, who are just going, there's not much for me here, so I'm going to go to Australia, I'm going to go to Dubai, I'm going to go to America, or maybe somewhere else in Europe if they've got a language. I mean, I think it's a much bigger story than we know, the drain of people who are just not going to stay here.
And why would they?
Yeah.
Taxes are so high, you don't get a return for your taxes. You know, I don't see a police on the street.
No.
I have to do my own policing if my kids get mugged. Most can't get a GP appointment. If you have a chronic illness, you can't get an appointment for a long time.
Right.
And why would you stay? We do not have a growing, thriving economy.
No. We really don't. What's it like in Westminster Council in terms of the way that that's run, in terms of how they're helping the general populace of London?
So the problem is that the administration now is so focused on environmental issues, woke issues, that they're not really prioritising what actual residents in all of London need. They're not addressing the soaring crime rates. They're not addressing the unfairness of allocation of social housing that's happening under our noses. And people just want a competent government that is patriotic, puts British people first.
And gets out of the way.
And gets out of the way. But also, the sole purpose of government, I mean, in the early century, the sole purpose of government was to keep us safe.
Yeah.
You can't privatise police. You can't privatise defence. So that is their role, and they're failing.
Yeah. Yeah, London is more, I think, dangerous now than it's ever been. And I was born here a very long time ago.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been through all sorts of different phases, the 70s when there wasn't much money around for anybody, and there was garbage in the streets everywhere. But still, it wasn't as dodgy as it is now somehow.
Well, for instance, my safer neighbourhood team in my ward was cut from 10 to 1.
Right.
And it's residents that get the brunt of that. You've got Sadiq Khan, who's paying his top team over £2 million. Nobody asks, can money from that not be diverted to police? He's cut the police in the Royal Parks, saying he doesn't have money. Where is all that money going?
Right.
He's increased his share of council tax, and he's just focused on punishing drivers.
Yeah. I mean, I get in the car now, and I consider it a good week if I haven't had some kind of penalty charge notice fired on me, you know, for nothing in particular.
I mean, it was the Conservatives that put in the 20 mile per hour speed limit in Westminster, in some major roads. And it catches so many people out. You get prosecuted for 23 miles per hour, and that is the bread and butter of traffic trials right now.
I know people who've just given up driving in London because they got so many, 23 mile an hour, charges that they just thought, I can't do it anymore. Can't do it.
When I drive at 20 miles per hour, my kids are like, Mum, why don't you drive?
I know.
Why are you going so slow?
Yeah, I know. It's shocking.
It's shocking, and I feel it's just to catch people out.
It is. It's a punishment, isn't it?
It's a punishment for driving.
They don't want you to be driving. They really would rather you didn't have a car. But I'll tell you what, if you don't have a car in this city, you're then just going to be worried about getting on the train, getting mugged, getting on a bus, getting mugged.
Exactly
a lot of women want to be in a car because, it's safer than walking around.
But also, my mum's 90, she's lived here since the 60s.
Yeah.
You can't tell her what she should and shouldn't do. She's not going to take a bus right now. She likes to drive. It's her independence. It's her choice. The Labour government likes to take away choice. They believe the government makes better decisions than you do. And that's the problem. And it's obvious that they're not making the best decisions for the country.
No. Even their own party don't believe them.
What's to come next? I mean, it's like you say that there's a big drain of of talent. There's also a big drain of wealth. It was the Conservatives that abolished the non-dom, not for any kind of political national reason, not for the best for the country, but it was a political move to outdo Labour. And what have we seen? We've seen the biggest drain of millionaires this country's ever seen, double of that in China. And they take away with them their taxes that they pay, the money that they spend. And only we lose out. Without a growing private sector, coming back to the welfare bill, there will be no money to take care of those that need it. Economics is about the allocation of rare resources, the proper allocation, and money is rare. And people have to ask themselves, is the government allocating that efficiently or inefficiently? And as we've seen with net zero, a bloated public sector, the welfare bill, it's inefficient, and it's the taxpayer that ends up paying, or they borrow, or they print money, which is inflationary.
It's all bad.
It's all bad.
Well, we can only hope that it gets better.
And that's why I defected.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty good reason. Leila, good to meet you. Thank you very much indeed. Leila Cunningham, Westminster City Councillor for Reform UK. Coming up, we're going to speak to Lord Toby Young. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:41. I'm Mike Graham. This is, of course, the home of common sense, the one place to be to hear the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Sue in Scunthorpe says, my 34-year-old daughter, who receives PIP, is sat at home all day, every day, has no friends, no social life, basically rotting away whilst waiting for ADHD medication. It's heartbreaking to see. 18 months now as there's a shortage. How? Why? The NHS and the whole system is an absolute joke. Yeah, I mean, there's so much in this benefit story. We'll have to come back to it because I'm probably not going to be able to do too much more on this particular show. Because right now we're going to speak to Lord Toby Young, Tory peer, Vice Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Free Speech and founder, of course, of the Free Speech Union. Toby, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Obviously a big free speech week after what happened at Glastonbury at the weekend, where the rapper concerned, Bob Vylan, I suppose he's only one half of Bob Vylan, has come out and said that he's being victimised because he was speaking out. He's had his contract dropped by his agents. He's not going to. He has his visa taken away from his trip to the United States of America. I don't know whether it's going to end up being a good career move for him or a bad career move for him. But I'm assuming you would sort of defend his right to say what he said.
Yes, I would. I mean, I think it was pretty abhorrent, pretty unsavoury, and borderline racist.
Yeah.
And had he launched into a rant using the P word or the N word and been part of a white rapping skinhead duo, I think the BBC would have pulled the plug, and his career would now be over. I mean, anti-Semitism is weirdly almost now an acceptable form of racism at places like Glastonbury. But nevertheless, I would defend his right to say it, and I don't think he should be prosecuted. I mean, the test I like to apply here, Mike, is what's called the Brandenburg test, which dates back to a famous Supreme Court case in the US called Brandenburg versus Ohio. And under that test, speech should be protected unless it's going to lead to imminent lawless action. That is, unless you can show with some confidence that it's going to lead to an outbreak of violence. And even though what Bob Vylan chanted was deeply unpleasant, nevertheless, I don't think it's going to lead to an outbreak of violence against the IDF. So according to the Brandenburg test, that speech should be protected by the First Amendment. Now, we don't have a First Amendment in this country, so it may be that it's prosecutable nonetheless, and there's an issue about whether you should prosecute someone like Lucy Connolly, but not Bob Vylan. I think Lucy Connolly's speech was also protected by the Brandenburg test, and if we had a First Amendment in this country, she wouldn't have been prosecuted either. Right. But it is, I think, quite hard to argue that what Lucy Connolly said constituted stirring up racial hatred against a particular racial group, given that asylum seekers aren't really a racial group. No. But to say that it was, in her case, a stirring up racial hatred offence, but not in his case. But I mean, in his case, the IDF's not really a racial group either. It's a military organisation. So there does appear to be a double standard here. My position is neither should be prosecuted. But if you're going to prosecute one, it doesn't make much sense to bang Lucy Connolly up for 31 months, but to let Bob Vylan off scot-free.
Yeah. And the other argument about, yes, he was talking about death to the IDF. However, by association, he's also possibly inciting violence against Jewish people, isn't he? Because, if you were a Jewish person in that crowd, and I think I've spoken to a couple of people who were at Glastonbury, and they said it was pretty intimidating, and if, for example, there might have been, I don't know, a stall outside of that particular concert venue when they were watching Bob Vylan, suddenly that had a couple of Israeli flags on it or something like that. Do you not think that somebody would have been incited to do something to that?
Well, I don't think any Jewish people or anyone holding an Israeli flag was attacked at Glastonbury. So, I mean, it may be that the police decide to prosecute Bob Vylan nonetheless and claim that he was stirring up hatred against a racial group. But I think his defence counsel will argue that there's a distinction between Jews on the one hand and the IDF on the other. I mean, it's a pretty thin distinction, as you say. Most of the population, most of the Jewish population of Israel are technically members of the IDF, including some teenagers. Right. So it was effectively calling for the genocide of the Jewish population in that part of the Middle East. But I think he could nevertheless mount a pretty good defence. I think we could have mounted a pretty good defence in Lucy Connolly's case, and argued no, she's not guilty of stirring up racial hatred because asylum seekers are made up of many different ethnic groups, not just one. And in any event, they're not defined by their membership of an ethnic group. They're defined by the fact that they're seeking asylum in our country. But unfortunately, Lucy, as we know, pleaded guilty, which is one of the reasons.
And that seems to be the thing that most people who are in favour of her being locked up now kind of fall back on. Whenever you get into a row with anyone on social media about whether Lucy Connolly should be freed, it's always they always say, "Oh yeah, but she pleaded guilty to a very serious offence." But we all now know that she was persuaded to do that because she thought that would help her probably to get home quicker.
Yeah, that's right. I think she unwisely pled guilty, and she pled guilty to a particular manifestation of the stirring up racial hatred offence, which was intending to stir up serious violence against a particular racial group, and that carries a higher tariff. And that's one of the reasons she got 31 months from the judge, because she'd pled guilty to probably the most serious form of the stirring up hatred offence. I mean, it was very unwise, and had she pled not guilty, I think she might well have been acquitted. We know that Jamie Michael, the former Royal Marine, he was in touch with the Free Speech Union after he was charged with stirring up racial hatred for a 12-minute Facebook video he posted in the aftermath of the Southport attacks. With our advice, he pled not guilty. We paid for his defence, and it took a jury all of 17 minutes to unanimously acquit him. And I think that Lucy Connolly might well have been acquitted too had she pleaded not guilty. And I think, I mean, I was very disappointed that when the Free Speech Union paid for her appeal, the High Court judges, 3 High Court judges, concluded that her sentence wasn't manifestly excessive. I mean, we made the case that there are mitigating circumstances here. She deleted the tweet within 4 hours. She apologised for it. She was traumatised because she'd lost an 18-month child herself due to NHS negligence. So she found the death of 3 schoolgirls in Southport particularly triggering. But none of those things were considered relevant mitigating factors by the High Court, so they didn't overturn the sentence, which was deeply disappointing. And now she's got to continue to remain in prison until August. She'll be out now in about August.
Right. As long as they don't try and get her to sort of retaliate in some way, which, according to Richard Tice, they might be trying to make her do. What about the BBC's role in all of this? Because, I mean, you could argue as well that the BBC, while, you know, not necessarily wittingly doing so, were broadcasting this ghastly message of about the IDF to the world. You know, they were live streaming it. It wasn't, you know, the plug wasn't pulled, as it were. So they could technically be accused of promulgating it.
Yeah, no, I think the BBC are definitely at fault here. I mean, I think we have to distinguish between the question of, well, was this lawful free speech? And I think my understanding of the law is that, yes, it was lawful. But that's not an excuse for the BBC to broadcast it. I mean, what the BBC broadcasts is not just anything that's lawful. It's a subset of what's lawful. And there are other standards that apply here. You know, it may be lawful to call for the death of the IDF and to say things like, I hear people want their country back. Well, you can't have it, which is something else Bob Vylan said on stage. And he also referred to Zionists in the music industry, which sounded like, you know, a euphemism for Jews, and reviving the old trope that the Jews control the music industry. So I think for a variety of reasons, it was very unwise for the BBC to broadcast it. And when he started saying these things on stage, they should have pulled the plug. And as I said earlier, Mike, had he been a white skinhead rapper and started ranting against, the P word and the N word, then I think they would have pulled the plug without hesitation.
Yeah, and he'd probably be sitting in a prison cell at this very moment, having been arrested straight away as soon as he walked off the stage. But, that's another story indeed. Toby, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Lord Toby Young, Tory peer, Vice Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Free Speech, with a slightly different take from many people on free speech. He's also, of course, the founder of the Free Speech Union. Julie Hartley-Brewer coming up very shortly. We'll give you another shot at listening to my interview with the Green Party MP a little bit earlier on in the show. Coming next, right here.
One year on.
And it's already falling apart.
We did it! Smash the people smuggling gangs.
There is no deterrent.
More and more migrants have come to Britain.
You bought your bins there, Sakia.
And it turns out that Keir Starmer had a wardrobe busier than David Beckham's.
If it's the right kind of prisoner, Starmer and the gang can find them a cell.
One explosive hour.
U-turn after U-turn.
I'm frightened about how bad they are.
Absolute incompetence and deceit.
1 year of chaos.
Only on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 9:54. I'm Mike Graham. This is the home of common sense, of course. Earlier on in the show, I spoke to Green MP for North Herefordshire, Ellie Chowns. And, of course, we had a slight disagreement about wealth taxes. £100 billion is the benefit bill. It's too much, isn't it? Surely, to heavens. Where are we getting the money from?
Well, if it's about money, the changes that have been made to this bill anyway mean that it's not going to save the Treasury any money anyhow.
No, it's going to cost more money.
You shouldn't be starting a policy change like this on the basis of how are we going to squeeze more money out of the people who are already at the bottom of the pile. If the Treasury needs to raise more money, there's a very obvious way for them to do that, and that's through wealth taxes. It's through
you can't tax people. You can't put wealth taxes on people. They leave the country. You've seen it. It's happening before your very eyes.
That's actually absolute rubbish. There have been
not
11.
Rubbish. There's people leaving the country even as you're talking to me. They're getting on a plane right now and going to Dubai. Right now.
Mike, in the last year, there have been 11,000 pieces of media coverage based on one single report by an organisation called Henley and Partners that specialised.
No, that's not true. No, no. Listen, I sit here every day. I talk to people every day who are leaving the country. It's not just about one single report. You've got to get out of the Westminster bubble occasionally and talk to some real people.
Right. Could I finish my sentence?
Yeah, okay.
The media coverage on this issue has largely been based, I take the point that you've spoken to individuals. The report said that 9,500 millionaires were leaving the country. That's actually 0.03% of the millionaires. It's a tiny, tiny proportion. So, of course, you might have spoken to a millionaire.
It's not about millionaires, Ellen. It's not about millionaires. It's about ordinary working people who have had enough, because if you can now run a business from elsewhere, which you can now do because people are online, they don't have to be in a particular place. People are leaving this country and moving away because they don't wish to live in a country which is being ruined by the government currently.
I tried to respond telling you that there's actually no evidence of a multi-millionaire brain drain.
Yeah, well,
and you started talking about students leaving the country.
Well, I'm telling you that
not
everybody's
allowing me
leaving.
to finish my point about how wealth tax is how we could raise the money that we need to invest in public services. Which was what we were originally talking about.
But it won't work. Wealth tax doesn't work in any way, shape or form. You know that.
That's just an assertion, Mike. It's not an evidence-based view. You know,
well, I mean, if you're talking about evidence-based views, you can talk about any number of things that are not evidence-based, because nothing that comes out of Parliament is evidence-based, right?
Our policies on wealth tax are very much evidence-based.
What do you mean your policies on wealth tax are evidence-based? What evidence?
For example, a couple of weeks ago, the organisation Tax Justice UK published a report looking specifically at the option of a wealth tax on people who've got more than £10 million of assets.
Right.
They calculate that even taking...
And how is that evidence exactly? Sorry, how is that evidence? What, they've calculated something and projected something? That's not evidence, is it?
Absolutely it is.
How is it evidence?
Because it's been worked out. It's based on...
I'd like to see you proving that in a court of law. That's not evidence. You work something out, you make a treatise, you make a theory, this could work if we did it. That's not evidence, is it? You really think that's evidence, do you?
There are examples of other countries where wealth taxes have worked, but the specific point here is that if you're proposing a policy, under your argument, any policy proposal at all would have no evidence whatsoever, even if it was based on very thoughtful working through and examples.
Very thoughtful working through isn't evidence. It might be very well put together. It might be a very persuasive argument, but it's not evidence, is it?
It is evidence that this is an idea that has...
An idea is not evidence.
That this is an idea or proposal that has serious arguments behind it.
Well, it can have all of that, but it's not evidence, is it? Come on.
Well, in that case, we won't know until we try a wealth tax. So let's try one.
Right. So you don't know whether it would work, in other words?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah, evidence-based is an interesting phrase. Some MPs think that an evidence-based argument is based upon a projection from a survey that's been done. It's not evidence, is it? I spent about 5 minutes trying to convince her what evidence actually meant. Sorry, Julie Hartley-Brewis.
Hello.
I'm just talking to nobody. You are on the screen.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What's wrong
with them? Do we need
them?
evidence for anything anymore? I thought we just did what we fancied, and I mean, again, you got to remember that humiliation.